like to call the meeting of April 22nd, 2022 to order. Do you have any special intentions? Councilman Wilmot?
Thank you, Mr. President. I asked, if you will, to keep Debbie McGuire in your prayers. She recently passed away. She was a Lions for Good Government member, and she was a longtime Kenner resident. Thank you.
Councilman Segura?
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Council President. Councilman Carroll's not here yet. I was hoping he would do this, but I'd be remiss if we didn't mention the passing of former first councilwoman, Black Councilwoman Shirley Burton's passing. That's a certain loss for our city, considering her input into the city for all the years as a teacher, a business owner. Her husband had the pharmacy down in South Kenner, and her grocery store where she would let the kids come in and she says buy candy. I'm sure she probably gave it to them, but it had to have an answer to a question, and that's what struck me just with a lot in my heart was she had to ask them what was the sermon at church Sunday, and they had to explain it to justify giving the candy. I thought that was just a heartwarming thing for her to do to ensure that the kids that went to church understood what was going on. But again, with her passing, that's a loss to the city. I want her family to know that we recognize and remember what she did, because I know when she got elected, I was working for the city and spent a lot of time with her. So with that, pray for her.
Thank you, Councilman. Mayor?
Thank you, Council Chairman. Also, I want to remember Mr. Johnny Sullivan, owned AAA Trophies, but also was a longtime business person, but also was an employee of the City of Canton Recreation for quite a few years. Later on, he was actually a part-time employee of code enforcement too. So remember him in your thoughts and prayers. I think it was a sudden thing, and he will be missed.
Thank you, Mayor. We'd like to invite up Pastor Sean Ridge from the Vineyard Church to our invocation.
Let's bow our heads and pray together. Heavenly Father, we welcome your presence in this place. May your Spirit rest on each one of us gathered here, bringing peace and comfort to our hearts and to our bodies. Father, we pray for those intentions that were shared today. Lord, I pray peace. I pray your presence over the families involved. Lord, I pray that you would bring comfort to those situations. Lord, we thank you for the gift of life, the gift of family, and the gift of friendship. We thank you for the opportunity to be used by you to serve the people of this city. May our work bring honor and glory to you. I pray for this council gathered here. I pray for our mayor and our administration that they will lead with humility and compassion. Humility and compassion towards one another and the people they have been entrusted with. May they take their roles serious and speak with charity and restraint. May they see the humanity and dignity in those that they serve and those that they serve with, even when they disagree. I pray for the citizens of this city. May we see that not only do we have a voice, but we also have hands. We have hands to work. We have hands given to us to create. And may we use those hands to create a city better today than it was yesterday. May we do so with great character and conviction. And may we all be reminded that we are stewards of your authority and stewards of your creation. So help us to steward well the resources, the people, and the land that you have entrusted to us, with the reverence that your creation deserves. And finally, Father, renew us with the strength of your presence and the joy of helping to build a community worthy of every person here. We ask this as your sons and daughters, confident in your goodness and love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Well done. Thank you. Mayor Zone, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Good morning. We have a quorum this morning. In accordance with Council Resolution Number B14550, please be advised that all cellular telephones and other devices of this nature must be deactivated or silenced throughout the council meeting. We have correspondence, reports from the mayor, CAO, or department heads.
Mayor Zahn?
Thank you, Council Chairman. Just a few things before the next council meeting. I believe we have a music and movies in the park. We might have one right before that. The 6th and the 20th is music in the park, and also movies will be the 7th and the 21st. That'll be in Rivertown Park. That is something that's coming back after being gone for about 2 years. And I want to thank everyone involved in the Rivertown committees and Mark Glorioso, Lamakati Glorioso for making this things happen in Rivertown. While we're speaking about Rivertown, we also have the old Jandusa site. The old Jandusa site is down, the city building. We don't know at this point what is going to be done with it. We're thinking about using it possibly for the kids, for a lounge area, picnicking area, but that's not for sure. But it's good news they have that building actually down.
Did you say kids in the
Well,
lounge?
a lounge area for the kids to picnic.
Relaxation.
A relaxation area, yes, so it's where they can lounge. I'm glad you caught that, Councilman. It might sound a little odd. I'm going to yield this to Liz at this point to talk about FEMA and where we are with FEMA reimbursement, because they've been meeting with her. It'll come back to me.
Ms. Herron?
Thank you. Just for an update for y'all, FEMA did come out this week to do a few more site inspections. So we're working towards, that goal of them coming out. I have no real big update. We're still working the claims and submitting them to them, but they did come out for the Contra Training Center and the entire Muscardolino complex this week. So as soon as we get those site inspection reports back, we'll work with all our contractors to make sure all the damages have been identified before we sign and submit back.
Ms. Herron, at the last meeting, there was a discussion also, and I think after we spoke for a few seconds about a clarification, so would you like to?
Sure, yes, thank you.
If I'm not taking anybody out of it.
Thanks for the opportunity. So last meeting when we were discussing the fire station and how much remaining money there were, I misspoke and I didn't realize it till after. So I looked at a number, but I said a different number. So the clarification is that there's about 1.2 million left for the fire station.
Thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you.
Mayor?
And we will come back to the fire station for some things for Deborah to speak on, but also I want to go to Deborah first, and then go right into the fire station on the temporary locations for City Hall. Deborah.
I have passed out today Linda Nugent-Smith's updated market assessment. She's the one who did it right before we moved into the Macy's, which is what we relied upon to approve this as a temporary location. As you can see, she has concluded that there is no other possible contiguous space, with the possible exception of talking to the airport about some portion of the south terminal. And if that is an appropriate temporary location, that's not something that we had considered before. I do not know what the cost would be associated with that. I suspect they would probably do an intergovernmental agreement with us and would not charge us the rent. It would be whether or not it could be retrofitted for our temporary purposes. And again, we still have to wait for insurance and FEMA, so we have some idea as we put out our bids to rebuild at 1801, what time frame that's going to be. So with that, I understand that there is a committee that has been created to study the temporary location. I have provided, I think at this point, everything, unless there's something else you need us to collect, council members. Mr. Contravasquez is the collection point. He's the person to whom all data is being sent, but he's not necessarily putting together the presentation. We're all taking part in that. But at this point, I think we have ruled out, without vote, but just basically based on your comments, we've ruled out taking over gymnasiums. There's still a potential for Pontchartrain Center, but that is not, Pontchartrain Center upstairs meeting rooms is not sufficient, so that would just be one location. But that also has a price tag of a loss of about $250,000 of revenue when they do rent those spaces during the year. The trailers, which I believe you were given a couple of meetings ago, the estimated cost of the temporary trailers, which we would place in the back lot at 1801. So basically, we'd be at 1801, but constructing in the front and we're back there. There'd be no parking for all practical purposes, but at least we would have a place to put the trailers. So at this point, I could use some direction, and the landlord here is being as patient as the landlord can be, considering that we took it in the beginning, but at this point, they're looking for some indication from us. And then FEMA will need a little heads up as well, because they have approved this location as our temporary location. So if we conclude we're going to a different temporary location, then that will need to be something that Ms. Harry puts through with FEMA to get that approved. So at this point, if there's something else you want us to get for you, other data, are we ready perhaps to have a meeting so we can present further to you? How would you like us to proceed at this point, council? Because again, at the end of the day, this is your decision, not ours.
Thank you, Ms. Boschie. Any comments? Councilman Carroll?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Foster. Yes, thank you for that information. Obviously, full disclosure, my position has always been that we should not be here and should not be paying $54,000 or whatever that number was to do it. So if that, am I quoting that number correctly? $6,000. $1,000. You know, we should not be.
$75, I got it.
Yeah, 150 cents. We should not be paying at all. We should be able to work something out with our management, with our operations, code, everybody to figure out something where it is not more of a burden on the city, because we're not guaranteed to be reimbursed, you know, anything. We're not guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. So I believe whatever our responsibilities are to be able to look into, in the administration, that we both are on this together to find a space, a spot for us. That is what we have to do. You know, $6,000. No, I don't know why we should have to pay something. And that is my personal opinion, for us to work something out as it relates to moving our personnel to a location or locations to be able to function the city, because that is a priority. You know, to be able to function as a city. That's my personal opinion. I've always voted on that. I've always expressed that. It's just my personal opinion. So I think that is the direction we should move into, to try to figure out what we can do. And obviously, I appreciate the last meeting when I was obviously said that I didn't believe we should take over the gymnasium to do that. I still feel that way, that we shouldn't do that as well. So is it easy? No, it's not easy. Is it going to be a little more challenging for us to do it? Most definitely. But I think it is something that we can do collectively. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Mayor Zahn?
And Councilman Carroll, that's what we are asking, where and what. So this administration's asked a few times, where and what? What do we do? Because we've given the prices on different things. We've given where we can go, where we can't go. So again, I'd say where, and what does this council want to do? But we don't really get a response on that. We just get we don't want to be here. Well, at least from you. I don't want to be here, which that's fine. I understand that. I appreciate that. But then what?
Well, if it was up to me, I could just arbitrarily, or I could leave here today and think of something. Now, will it fit within what we have to do? I don't know. I think we need to start trying to say something, a building, community development, either OMV that is no longer used, we own that building. We have some building space in the Public Works building. We have a number of buildings around that we can modify to be able to bring our folks in to have a location. So we can start with that. And as far as a council meeting, hey, it probably would be a problem to have it at a gym for a council meeting. Even if we change it in different places or pick one centralized gymnasium, one of them that's big enough to do it, like the Bush Stewie Gym in Councilman Segura area, I think that would accommodate the council meeting. But the number of buildings that we own for different departments, and not knowing the IT situation with that computer and all that, that is a concern as well. So I realize you guys are pushed with definite responses. I just think it may not be perfect what we have to do, but you know, you guys have done a fantastic job through COVID when we had people at their homes. So even that has to be like a situation that we have to get to revisit again. We can't do that?
You cannot, my understanding is, and I'll let the legal department weigh in, but you can only do that if it's issued by the state, and we would not, you can't have a public meeting on Zoom right now. If that's what you were saying.
No, not for the public.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I mean,
For employees.
For employees.
Yeah, well, we've been asked to get employees back, so we've gotten the employees back, so we get,
Yeah, yeah.
this is what works right now, unless, I would invite you to get with Deborah
Mhm.
and maybe be one-on-one, maybe look at a few spots along with general services and get your input, but then I need 3 other council people to agree with you.
Without a doubt, and, you know, I'm putting this all out there without having any conversation.
I understand.
With the council meeting, I'm just on the point saying it, and maybe just at a hybrid that we can also do. I'm not saying everyone needs to be at home, but it should be some type of a hybrid that we could possibly put together for different locations that we physically own right now, with the complements of the IT to support. And maybe some people are, until we get a spot permanently or each week to get a better spot to do it. So, you know, after saying that and letting all of my counterparts hear that, I think that is something that we have gotten a direction from you as where we are, what we need to do to move forward. We have to make a decision, as you said. We got to make a decision to do something. And maybe not at this moment, but at least next week, we should have that committee that has been put together to listen to everything that you have to offer to us as far as the actual condition and the shape of the building, and to what are some of our ideas to know the availability of every building that we have in the city of Kenner to see what we can or cannot use. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Brannigan?
Yeah, on the, being here in this location is right now where I think we need to be, obviously, because everything's set up. My concern is after the 18 months runs out, am I correct that we have 18 months approved by FEMA where we're only paying 10% of the rent? So it's costing us $6,000 a month for that 18-month period. And when does that period end?
Yeah, so usually temporary locations are for 18 months, but that's not a definite. Obviously, they would need to get information from us. Basically, FEMA is reasonable. If you have sat for 18 months and not done anything or moved towards a rebuild, then they may not be, you know, they wouldn't lean to extending the 18 months. But if you're showing progress and they obviously know construction takes longer, you would request that they would extend that timeline. And so it is normal for them to extend it depending on the circumstances. So it's 18 months, but it's not like 18 months and you're kicked out. As we're approaching 18 months, we will be working with FEMA to extend that.
Okay, when did that timeline start?
It started the day of the declared emergency, yes.
Okay, so 8/29/21, that started, so we have until February of 23.
Yes.
End of February. So my concern is, you know, if the rent is $60,000 a month, and we get, you know, we know, as Mayor Zana said in the past, that, you know, rebuild, and anybody who builds anything knows, a rebuild is not gonna be done in 6 months. There's no way.
Yes.
So, and we know that we've already decided that we want to go back to 1801's location. So we got that down. So we just need to figure out what we're doing at that location. And that, you think, by doing that and getting started with that, will appease FEMA
Yes.
to maybe give us an extension, so we don't have to pay $60,000 a month. When we do that, we know, I would think it's gonna be at least a 3-year process, maybe a 4-year process. How long, are you familiar with how long they would extend things?
Yeah,
or-
typically they do 6-month increments.
Okay.
It's not a definite, like, you can request longer, and I think that the amount of damage at City Hall would justify us to do a longer request. Obviously, we would give them the timeline that we have in mind with our construction company to show them. And I mean, where we're at now with FEMA is they came out and did the site inspection. They haven't built the project yet. So there are steps that have to be done and that they're aware of. And we're meeting all their deadlines. We're submitting every, document that they're requesting. So There's nothing that I would say would jeopardize anything at this point.
Okay, so we are progressing according to what their rules and regulations are.
Yes, sir.
To make sure that we stay in compliance so that we can get reimbursed.
Correct,
So, okay, they haven't reimbursed us anything,
correct.
and we have been paying, when did the rent start for this building? August 29th? Oh, no, when we moved in?
So from August 29 for the first 6 months, the negotiated agreement is based upon the fair market value times the square footage we were using. So Mark was able to identify, like the first week, we did nothing but the parking lot. Remember, we were now ice and water.
Right.
And then the second week, or second 10 days, we had 3,000 square feet. We literally just had the code department. So it is a sliding scale for that first 6 months that goes up to the last, I think the last month, we actually had the full occupancy. So it's not the full 57, 58,000 a month per month to be reimbursed. Starting on January 1st, March 1st. Starting in March, the proposal from the landlord is the contract, which I submitted to you guys several meetings ago, and I can give you another copy. But that's the proposal, which is basically the full fair market value of 57 or 58 per month. And their proposal, I think, is for 18 months from that date. But again, it's all, they know that you have to approve it, that there is no, there's no agreement until you guys agree. So at this point, basically, we're going to do month by month, month to month, based on fair market value until council has decided how they would like to proceed.
Have we paid them anything?
This week, again?
So they're in line for payment to get paid next Friday, to
Okay.
catch us up through. So, we've been in negotiations with them, they've been handling that side, but, they will receive a payment next week.
For both.
Okay.
For
Yeah.
for
And
this.
that's from September through March, is that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how much that payment is?
I can get you the exact numbers and the breakdown between the two from March
Okay.
and,
Okay.
it was based on the square footage, like Deborah said, so those first few months, we didn't use the entire building, so.
Right. Well, I would think they'd be happy getting rent from a building that's sat there for how many years? 10 years empty? So, but my concern is, if FEMA comes back and tells us, okay, you're progressing, and all of a sudden we see whatever's going on at 1801, they agree with that. When they cut us off, then we're responsible for the whole 54, 60,000, whatever it is, and that's a lot of money.
Yeah, like I said, I don't see any concerns at this point. That would definitely be something that as soon as I would find out, would, relay to the administration so that we can have a plan moving forward. But, I think, like I said, FEMA's biggest thing is just reasonable costs and knowing how long construction takes right now, so.
Okay.
If I may just follow up, FEMA will never give you we're going to do this in the future, but you can look at what they've done elsewhere. Hurricane Laura devastated Lake Charles, just devastated. I mean, devastated their government, the buildings were not as bad, but just the operations were pretty terrible. And they were able to get multiple extensions, and then the president went back after the fact, probably 2 years later, right? And canceled out the 10%. So they ended up getting 100% reimbursement. So they started it thinking initially it was 100%, and he went to 10%. But once they realized how damaged it was, A, they extended it, and B, they waived all of the co-payment. So there is potential for that here. We are uniquely damaged in vis-a-vis our buildings. And so again, we can't guarantee that would happen, but certainly that would be the request. And I think Lake Charles is a good example for us in terms of what might happen.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Wilmot.
Thank you, Council President. I have some questions that I guess I'm gonna, we had some modifications to the building itself, after we moved in, and some went on for some time, dealing with the walls and so forth. I know we have an expenditure involving that, and as far as the air conditioning is concerned, I know we had pumped in air conditioning for some time, and of course now I know today that's not the case. It looks like we're using the building's air conditioning, so obviously there's more cost involved in having those types of things operational. Do we have figures on that?
So everything that's been spent was on those expenditure reports, but I know there's so much information, so I'll try to narrow down what exactly was, for this location. So because we have more than one temporary location, it's all lumped together. So I'll try to identify those costs. Surprisingly, the rental of things can be very pricey compared to if we can just fix things that are here and just use them normally. So it's not always the case that a rental is cheaper, so, but I can give you those figures.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Seow?
Thank you, Council President. So, as I'm hearing from the administration that, and I thank you for the Lake Charles number, because that's where I was trying to get in my head. Obviously, FEMA seems to never want to commit in advance for what has been the history with storms, whether it be Laura or the East Coast, the superstorm they had up there, to find out what they did with their government investments at those times. And as I appreciate that we, as the council, need to give you this answer, but we need to do it expeditiously to say, okay, we've given you the partial, as I appreciate that we want to go back to 1801. Now we have to move forward quickly and start setting the tone to say what we want to do at 1801, so that we can then get in the architects, engineers to get the design, conceptualize, get a number, and then present to the council to say, yes, we're looking and agree to move forward with this type of building at this cost. Then that can go to FEMA to say, how do y'all like this? Do y'all think it's good? Should we continue and move forward? And get some feedback from them to guide us to then continually move forward. And then as CFO just said, that even if we run out of the 18-month timeline, I understand, as long as they see we have an architect, an engineer, or out for construction bid, or under construction, they're gonna say, and should say, okay, you're doing what we expected you to do, we're gonna do what our part is allow you to keep moving forward. So as I go back and circle around, it's at our doorstep, 7 of us, to do something right now. So when are we gonna do something? We have a committee that was put together that I haven't heard of anything going on with. So when, how fast are we gonna sit down and start putting things together to give the administration, give FEMA our guidance as to what we want to do, how we're going to do it, and when we're going to do it? Any? So are we, let y'all confer, because are we ready to give some guidance when we're going to move forward? That's what I was hoping for.
Yes, yes. The plan we wanted to gather the information, obviously, and we've gotten a lot of information, and I still think, I would be planning to set up a meeting. The committee is Councilman Brannigan, Councilman Segura, a smaller committee, and collect, go over that information with the administration and really find out, ask any questions that we obviously have, and then have a recommendation. My hope is to do that in the next 2 weeks, that we will be scheduling that. And then obviously, that's something going forward, we would all discuss, and that would be something that would obviously be do in public as well, so we can get all the information and really make a good decision and present it reports to the rest of our council members.
Okay, thank you, and that's what I was hoping that we would get to, where we could start setting the timeline for the committee that was formed to go to work, but also bear in mind that any committee sanctioned by the council president is a public body, so all of those discussions of that committee have to be done with public notice. We have to point out when we're going to meet, where we're going to meet, publicly, and the public is invited to attend as we hold those discussions. So let's not miss that step. Then we can gather more information as we ask questions. Because, like I said, I'm familiar with building a building when I oversaw the construction of the police complex. I know what it takes, and I know how long it takes. And if we don't take the first step, you never get any closer. So this is what we need to do, is get our act together and move forward. So thank you for setting a timeline for a meeting that we can start doing this work to get hopefully in the next couple of months, a vote to say, here's what we want to do and what it should look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Segura. Councilman Brannigan?
Yes. In order for us to be able to figure out what we're gonna do at 1801, we need to know, I would think we need to know how much money we have to work with. That's number one. And I don't know if anything's changed on insurance proceeds, which your guesstimate, or if you have a firm number from the insurance. If you have a number, from FEMA, which you think they would be contributing, we need to have the dollar amount, or, a pretty close dollar amount, to be able to say, okay, well, tear the whole thing down, let's rebuild, or we need to fix what's there. So I think that the starting point is, we need to know how much money we have to work with to be able to determine where we go and what we do and get the best deal that we can possibly get.
Ms. Fosh?
If I may, one of the, and several people have addressed something about this, I want to remind everyone about the 428 process. What FEMA allows you to do is to go in and say that we would like to improve what we had and build it back better, more resilient, more energy efficient, more, basically hitting all the touch points you need, obviously bringing it up to code. And so we put out the RFP for the 428s with GOSEP assisting us and FEMA's involved for the 1801 complex, which could be 1, 2, or 3 buildings. It could be, basically they will come back and say, here's what you have now, here's what this would cost. For wastewater, because that has multiple buildings, multiple issues where you could build back better there, and for recreation as a whole. So one of the things with the 428, and Councilman Brannigan, it sounds sort of counterintuitive, but FEMA will identify what they think our damages are, and then they will pay us what's above insurance, whatever insurance ends up paying us. If you go back to them with the 428 and you say it's going to cost X, so that rebuilding as is costs Y and rebuilding better costs X, if we agree, and again, we won't be here if you agree, that you want to go to the new program and you want to build back better and more resilient and more energy efficient, they will give you more than the value of just the straight repair, but they will not let you come back again. On a regular PA, you go in and you say, look, my building's damaged to the tune of $2 million. They give you the money, you come back and say, oh, wait a minute, we found some more damage. They give you more money. So FEMA is interested in cutting that process off. As you know, we most recently, are we done with Katrina? We still have a couple of open Katrina PAs. So FEMA would very much like to be able to say, here's all your money, and you're done. And even if it is more than what the estimated value of your damage is. So right now, having FEMA on the ground before the insurance has come back is pretty spectacular. They are working with us. They are very well aware of the damages. So I think what's going to happen to be able to identify what you're going to be able to get from FEMA is going back to FEMA with a 428 proposal and say, again, this is something that you guys will need to discuss within your group. If this is what you want to do, the council will vote on it. But if you say, okay, what we want is a newer, more modern, single building or 2 buildings or whatever it is you decide that you want, that goes back to FEMA, and FEMA will say yes or no, we'll give you that money. So insurance, they'll say, this is your damage, here's your check. FEMA's like, what do you want? Do you promise not to ask for any more money? Okay, we'll give it to you. So I understand the point you're making. We are having a challenge with the insurance company right now. Part of the issue is that the insurance company has it's clear, A, B, what are recreation? Fassbender, AB Fassbender, those are all total. C is probably not, but it's still more than 75%. So it would have to be built back up to code, which may end up being elevated. The same insurance company that is not yet ready to pay us for our claims is also not willing to write our policy. I think I reached out to Councilman Brennan a little bit about this. Not willing to rewrite our policy till we tell them what we're doing with our buildings. And what we're doing with our buildings is waiting for the insurance company to give us money. So I have a feeling that with respect to those, we're going to end up in litigation/arbitration because we have Lloyd's involved in that syndicate. Yes, sir.
I have heard that we have very good insurance to cover these buildings. Do you have any idea how much the insurance company is on the hook for?
70? Everybody give that an overall number. I think it's 70.
70 million to fix everything in the city.
To fix the buildings that were on the schedule list. We had some buildings damaged, like the huts at Fleet or Public Works. There are a number of buildings that were not on the schedule that we're going to have to fix ourselves. A couple of press boxes and that sort of thing. I think it's, but if you wouldn't mind, Councilman Brannigan, if I could get back to you with that actual number, I would like to do that.
Yeah, I mean, because if we're looking at a $70 million claim, okay, and we need to know what we're doing at 1801, I think that piece has to be broken out so that we can come, so this council can come to a conclusion that, you know, it's gonna cost $500 a foot to build 70,000 feet in a brand new building, or whatever that number, you know. We can't decide what we wanna do until we have a guesstimate of pretty close how much money we're gonna get. And then on the FEMA side, I mean, I think for the city of Kenner in the future, it would be better to tear down everything that's there and start over and have an energy efficient, beautiful new building to house every person that we need housed and utilize the space in the most efficient manner. You know, that would be the perfect world, okay? But, you know, we definitely will need, out of that 70 million, what is the 1801 piece, and then, you know, with the FEMA, you know, with them coming in and saying, we'll give you over what the insurance is, if we need to have a guesstimate on that too, and hopefully the numbers are pretty close. I just can't believe it takes 8 months for FEMA to get here to assess the damage that we had. I mean, we got blown out the water.
Excuse me, Councilman, may I make a recommendation, please, or a suggestion? The committee being you, Councilman Segura, and Councilwoman McKinney, is it possible maybe next week they could get with you and Ms. Herring, and maybe y'all could have kind of this discussion and see where we are? And then we could start moving forward, as Councilman Segura said, to publicize and get the first meeting going. But,
and I've been begging for this meeting, and now I'm going to say, please, can we wait till after May 1st, because we've got budget brain right now. If we could do it May 2nd.
no, it has to be done by 3 o'clock today.
It would be very helpful.
That's fine. But again, instead of this,
I agree with you, Council President, that's, if we can do it after May 1st, that's fine. But we need to know what we have to work with in order to be able to have, I mean, if we
well,
got
we'll
3
probably
hours,
have more
we got a
information. I
problem.
mean, hopefully we have a little more information by that time.
And just to be clear, the 428, the 428 is above your insurance. We have good insurance, but we're not fully insured. We're not insured to the values of our building. The last values that were assessed were 15 years old, so the actual values of the building were not insured to those values. That being said, FEMA is wanting to make you whole after your insurance. So it is important to know what our insurance is, but it's also important to know what it is that we want and why we need it. Because the 428, whether we have $2 million in insurance and it costs $14 million, or we have $7 million in insurance and it costs $14 million, we're shooting for FEMA for the $14 million, and they pay the difference between the insurance if we can convince them that the 428 project is correct. So I look forward to having this conversation with you guys.
And I'm just going to throw this one more insurance comment since you said it. You know, we may not know the actual number until in other words, the decision on the buildings and what's going to be done may affect by policy what the company is actually obligated to pay.
That's correct.
So whether it's replacement cost or whether it would be cash value is going to depend on what the ultimate deposition is.
Correct. If we build it back.
Disposition, pardon me, not
Yes.
deposition.
So if we build it back the way it is versus if we end up removing it and replacing it, we're gonna have a different value come back here, absolutely.
Councilman Hayes?
Well, obviously, we don't need a little information, we need a lot of information, and we have to start with your input and with everybody's input from the insurance side. And I only ask that you don't use the term "build back better." That doesn't instill a lot of confidence.
Councilman Carr?
Thank you, Mr. President. And look, it's good to hear all this conversation going on. Just two comments. I equate this to pretty much a families in the city of Kenner that are having to deal with the insurance company. For us, that's FEMA and the insurance company. But also, these families still have to be able to make plans, accommodations for their family. So even though they're waiting, they're trying to figure this out, they have to do something. For us, it's trying to figure out how we can avoid costs, or costs that we don't have to. So I'm just asking with the committee members of the council, do we have anybody from the city of Kenner on this committee that can keep us, knowledgeable? And I'm just gonna throw two names out here, individuals, they're gonna hate me for this, who I know knows more than all of us know about these buildings, which is Mr. Glorioso or Mr. Kenny Melvin. They have the details. So if they're not on this committee, well, we're trying to have a hybrid, try to figure out keeping both balls in the air. If we don't have somebody, we're in a room by ourselves talking to each other without any specific information to make valuable decisions. So I would suggest that we add someone with that knowledge to the committee from the administration side, if that is possible.
Go ahead.
Certainly, it's a council committee, so the three of us, but we're gonna consult the administration on an ongoing basis, and they'll be involved in getting that information.
So what I hear you saying is they cannot be on this committee with the council. Is that what I'm hearing?
If I
I'll make
can,
sure that
because I
they're
was-
here.
Right.
I think what Councilman McKinney's saying is that I'll make sure that those two individuals are definitely at that public hearing.
Okay, but
Go ahead, Councilman.
Not on the committee, the council.
in the life of this council, we haven't had a lot of committees. I think I was on the last committee that was formed, which was on the boat issue. The committee that the council president forms is a committee of the council. We can entertain any involvement of anybody else to assist us. So the three of us, once we start holding our meetings, can invite and entertain anybody to give us consultation information. So you're correct, but it's not as adding them to the committee. It's as the mayor said, or we, the council, or the president, or the chairperson of the committee says, I want these people here to give advice as we're meeting.
Exactly. And Councilman, thank you for the clarity. That's exactly what I'm saying. We want to have a meeting among ourselves. Then after we leave out of the room, we meet with somebody else and say, no, that is counterproductive. We have to be able to, they won't be committee members, but they will be assisting us with the decisions that we're trying to make. And I think that would be great. And sorry, Mr. Glorioso, Mr. Kenny Melvin, but Mr. Mayor, if you can pick somebody that will be more studious to the situation, to the buildings and all, to support us. Would be
No,
great.
they'll definitely be here. And if there's somebody else that needs to be here, just let us know and I'll think about it.
Thank you.
Think who else needs to be here, but I think the two that you mentioned are the ones that we definitely.
Yeah. And the only other part would be IT, somebody
Well, yeah.
with that experience. And I'm not sure they're,
We'll go over the
Yeah.
meeting people,
okay, thank
but
you.
those two for sure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you,
Thank you,
Councilwoman. Thank you, Councilman Seville.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Brannigan?
Yeah, and the reason I'm bringing up needing to know about the insurance and premiums is because when you look at it, if we went and built a 70,000 square foot building at 400 a foot, that's $28 million. So that's the starting point is the dollars, and we'll be able to hopefully come up with the best situation for the future of our city.
Thank
That's
you,
what the
Councilman.
game plan is.
Ms. Foshee?
So that's it on the temporary location. Unless anyone has any questions, I'd like to go on to do a clarification about the discussion we had last night about the fire station, and funding for the fire station. In front of you, what you have is the IGA that was adopted by this this council on December 21st.
Ms. Foch, use your microphone. Okay,
I'm talking into my
there you go. Thank you.
So you have before you a copy of the intergovernmental agreement executed between the city of Kenner and the state of Louisiana Department of Transportation. It was voted on December 21. It was signed December 28. In there, it specifically identifies the fact that the funding thus far was December 21, 2018. The funding was incomplete at that time. On January 18, 2019, there was a Kenner Council meeting, at which point there was a presentation regarding all of the pieces parts, the flyover, the traffic. We had Carmelo Gutierrez there who was doing the traffic study. Frank Lang was there, a fire station and the access road. The mayor spoke, Heather spoke, I spoke, but most importantly, Ed Rager spoke. And in Ed's presentation to the council, he specifically said, and I think he was responding to a question either by Ms. Alessandro or Mr. Brown about, wait, do we have enough funding? And he said, no, this is not sufficient funding. We will have to get more funding. Between the January of 2019 and March of 2020, Mr. Rapier negotiated with DOTD, and during that time, Mr. Rapier made presentations to this council or members of this council in small groups and with the mayor's conference room, talking about the funding and the fact that before we even arrived here, a decision had been made that portions of Williams was being given to the city by DOTD in exchange for the city's match for the flyover. We weren't even asked if we were making a match for the flyover, we were just told we were doing a match for the flyover. So at that time, and again, a lot of this is from my memory of Ed's presentations, they wanted to give us more of Williams as our match, as our additional funding for the fire station. And we said, no, we don't want more of Williams. What we'd be interested in largely is Reverend Richard Wilson. A couple of reasons for that. One, we have a lot of issues down there with open ditches, with sidewalks, the area in particular over by the East Jeff Levy District. New construction created some dangerous pedestrian and vehicular areas, and we were never able to do anything about it. It would require us to go to the state, so this would both give us that opportunity to make those repairs if we own the building, the street. We would be able to deal with the traffic speeding through Rivertown, and we'd be able to expand our festival footprint. And I can sort of carve and date it because I spoke with Councilman Carroll about having a Lloyd Price festival before Mr. Price passed. So the hope was that that would actually enhance economic development in Rivertown. Now, even with those two pieces of funding, and the last document you have is from Ed Rapier from July 6, 2021, that shows the initial CEA, which is what you have, $3.4 million, road transfer, $3.8 million, 1.5 of that road transfer is Kenner's match for the flyover. That's 2.3 to the fire station. That's still not enough. We are $200,000 or $300,000 short. We brought that to your attention when we brought the Green Book capital outlay, because we have asked the state to give us another 250. I think it's 250, Tom, if you remember. 270 something, another 270, asking them to give us another 270 to be able to complete that. A lot of that has to do with the time. You know, it's been since 2018, 2019, 2020, when this discussion was going on, prices of everything have gone up. So at this point, we are still short even with that funding formula. Now, I have every respect for this council. I seriously do, and I don't believe you would defund the fire station without having another funding source. So I truly hope and believe that there's going to be another way to fund it. This was the funding plan that has been in place for a while, but if, you know, that doesn't have to be the funding source, I understand that. I truly wish for just the short period of time we're left here, if you guys would call, you know, if you see something you don't like on the agenda, call and say, what is this, what's this for? Because I got the feeling that there was no memory of this prior discussion. So with that being said, we will work with you any way we can. If you need us to go back to the state for a different, try to get a different funding source, But this was not new information. You can listen to Ed's comments from January 18, 2019, and realize that the discussion about there not being enough funding has been ongoing for quite some time. So I'm happy to answer questions now or later, or bring you data, or whatever it is you need to be able to help make your decision on that.
Councilman Hayes?
What is the final answer? How much are we short right now? You can speak louder, please.
If we maintain the funding plan from 2019, we're short 250. If we reject the road transfer, we are short we're short 1.5 for our match for the flyover, and we'll be short 2.3 for our match for the fire station, plus another 270. Okay, so currently we're short 270.
Well, if we can't generate that internally, then I would suggest we talk to our bond counsel pretty quick, because we could do a budgetary loan, and Tommy is great right now with rates. You could do this, we won't have more than 10 million borrowed this year, so you can do it as a bank qualified tax exempt issue to the bank. So our fiscal agent bank is the first one to talk to, and I think they'll be very willing with rates the way they are right now to accommodate our needs. So that's one thing I would suggest you do.
All right, Liz, you got notes? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Brannick?
Got a question.
Yes, sir.
On the funding for the fire station and the flyover, the 1.5 million on the flyover, I understand has to be paid, I've heard, over 5 to 8 years to the state, not 1.5 million all in a lump sum. Is that correct?
Well, that wasn't presented to us ever, because we were told that they were giving us the road for 1.5, and that's how they were paying for it. So we were never in any discussion regarding if we weren't going to do it by road transfer, how we would need to pay it. So that's never been a conversation we've had.
Okay, so we need to.
But I can do that.
Figure it out. Okay. The other thing is, we have had additional sales tax revenue going into the general fund since July 1st. How much additional sales tax revenue have we had since July 1st to today, or whenever the last run would be?
We're over about 8 million over what our numbers collected were. It's a little more complicated with budget numbers because it all gets allocated, but I can give you a more breakdown on where we are as far as the budget. So we know how much.
So we're $8 million
Compared to
over
last year.
from last year.
Yes,
Okay, so that's money that's not budgeted.
correct.
Okay, so that money should be sitting somewhere
It
that
is.
could solve these two problems. The other thing is on unfilled positions that we have throughout the city. How many unfilled positions do we have throughout the city? 50, 100?
Mr. Melvin, you probably have 50 in your department alone, right?
Pretty much, yes.
So, and through other departments, obviously we have unfilled positions. And so that money should also be sitting there, and that could also be a source, because that money shouldn't be spent. That could also be a source to fix this problem that we ran into, and that would solve the problem of us not having to take the roads over for eternity and have to constantly do the maintenance on it. So I guess I'd like to know how much sales tax revenue is in addition this year that's not budgeted, and how many unfilled positions we have, and what the total, if you can get a pretty close total to how much salary that is, and because there are also 37% above the salary that's not being paid either for retirement, health insurance, and everything else. So I'd like those two numbers to be able to see if we could use that money to solve this problem. Then we don't have to take over the roads and assume that liability for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely, we're looking into that and get information for you from the next council meeting.
Thank you.
Councilman Segur?
It just brought up a question what Councilman Brannigan was asking about, and CFO saying, you know, our sales taxes were 8 million higher than last year. 21 to 22 budget was higher than the 20 to 21 budget. Wasn't the 2021 budget during COVID when we lost one?
When the mayor reads out those comparisons, that's actually money collected. That has nothing to do with what we budget. So that's actual received. So we're over what we received for the 2021 budget, not what was budgeted. Well, yeah, I mean, you have the COVID year, as far as to compare back, because even the 1920 year is gonna be part of COVID year. So, yeah, we're way up because of the decline during COVID, but we are up, we're reaching pre-COVID numbers.
Well, and I appreciate that, because I remember after Katrina, we had the same
Yes.
concerns. It's just that sometimes when you use those comparisons, it seems a bit skewed, because when you have a low sales tax income coming in this case, COVID, when everybody was shut down,
Yeah.
and then a hurricane comes in and kicks up the sales tax, it's,
Yeah, the trend, you can't even look at the trend right now, it's just so up and down because of, like you said, COVID, obviously sales tax declined, and now because of the disasters, sales tax is up. But I can give you I can give y'all a good estimate of where we are budget-wise and what I'm projecting out, with no disaster and no, COVID.
okay, but that's where I'm just trying to, understand too,
Yeah.
because I don't want to think that we have this
Exactly, and
$8
one thing.
million sitting around, but it's not really.
Yeah, and just to be clear, if we have excess funds, we'll do a budget amendment, which we are prepared to do, but that would just roll back into the general fund balance to be used and allocated in the next budget year. One thing to keep in mind is we have a 10% cost share for all of FEMA projects, so we need the 8 million, we need sales tax to grow so that we have enough funding to have a match for all these FEMA projects as well.
Okay, yeah, well, if you can, when you provide the breakdown that Councilman Rennie was asking, you can also, I'm asking to give me some idea of how did that fare out with the fact that it's compared to a year where we had a loss of income, but still had expenses, even though we did mitigate some expenses, but you still probably had a difference there that this money has to make up in the general fund.
Yeah, I'll do a couple of year comparisons for y'all just to show pre-COVID numbers.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Councilman Hayes.
Where are we with our 10% bond covenants minimum? Where are we now?
We were way over. I think we still had like a 10 million excess over what we have to have by
10 million excess.
excess, yeah.
Sounds like we're in a pretty good position in terms of the bond covenants.
Yeah, we are. We just need to make sure, obviously the whole sales tax numbers, it's inflated right now, so we don't want to bank on that money to stay. And obviously we'll have a lot of expenses coming up just with the repairs, so.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman.
I'm good.
Councilwoman McKinney.
Yes, and this is not directly related to the fire station discussion, but in discussing mentioning the obligations for FEMA for next year, is all of that, all of this 10% payments going to be included in the budget that's going to be presented in the next month?
Yes and no. So I am planning on doing some amount to match. Obviously, we're not going to have to hit that 10% next year because you only have to pay once the project's complete. Basically, as you pay vendors, FEMA pays you 90%, so you have to offset it. We're not going to pay all of our vendors next year. So that's something that I want to discuss with y'all, and hopefully in the budget hearings we can move forward with that. We are planning to budget an amount. It's just hard to know without having your insurance numbers what your 10% match is going to be. So I think if we start allocating now, we would have enough funds, to meet that 10%.
Okay, but I mean, I'm talking about for this building and things that we are fairly certain that we're going to be using for a certain amount of period, a certain period of time for
Yes,
rent
things
and
that
stuff
we
like
know,
that.
of course, but obviously the big cost comes in with repairing buildings,
Right.
and so we need to make sure we have funding for that.
Right, correct. Thank you.
Councilman Brannigan?
I got a question about the city hall deal. When do we have to have FEMA notified of what our plans are? Is it June 1st, July 1st, August 1st?
I mean, we've already, there's not really a deadline for that. The biggest thing that FEMA's gonna wanna know is our insurance numbers. Like, they're not going to allocate funding to a project until we get, so they know how much our insurance proceeds were.
And we
So,
don't have,
and we don't have that right now. So we're
So-
hoping, from what I've heard, in the next month or two, we'll be very, very close to at least A, B, and C, or A and B at least. And Pontchartrain, yeah, Pontchartrain
So
Center.
basically, the committee that's formed cannot decide, I mean, we already know we want to go back to 1801, so we
Yes.
don't know what the dollars are. And it's not like FEMA's breathing down our necks and we have to have this in 30 days.
No, but you need to have a plan, and it takes a long time for the 428 process. It's a new program that FEMA did. It's not very, it hasn't been used that much. And so basically, it's, like Deborah said, you build something that is gonna last the next disaster, and so that FEMA doesn't have to keep dishing out money. So we could build a Category 5 building that, that withstands the, damage from that. So we need to just move towards, are we gonna do 428? What does that look like for us? The RFQ would assign a designer, so we can start, moving that way to make sure that the council wants to do that.
So basically, our hands are tied until we know how much money is coming back from the insurance. And we'll have that in a month or 2 months.
I'm hoping, I think it's always good to plan, because as soon as we get that insurance report, then FEMA, we would send it to FEMA, and FEMA's gonna wanna know what our next steps are. So if we say, we have this 428 design plan, if we have everything that we think we need, we would present that to them. So I think it doesn't hurt to start now on looking at the 428. I understand the cost element, but from FEMA's perspective, you need to present what you need, regardless of what FEMA's paying. And then we would decide if we're gonna move forward with the plan or not.
Okay.
So,
I just wanted to make sure that FEMA's not breathing down our necks saying we want to know what your plan's on tomorrow.
no, there's so much damage in the city that they know, and we're working site by site, and they know that we're waiting on our insurance, and just like many other applicants with them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Hayes?
We're neophytes in talking about all of this. We have a consultant working with us now on the P&C side. It might be good, timely, to have that individual come back and give us an idea of where he is in looking at this. I mean, that's a starting point.
Absolutely.
Going into the budget process, have we locked and loaded on the 9th to the 12th of May?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The 9th will be in this chambers. If we go into the 10th, or 10th and 11th, 19th and 11th, the 10th and 11th, we go in to be in the back conference area simply because court is ongoing here, and we would need to have to reissue summonses and that sort of thing. But we'll get as much done on that first day as we can in this conference chamber, and thank you, Councilman Chairman, for allowing us to make that
The
accommodation.
majority clear their calendar for those days?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Foshee. Thank you, sir. Mayor?
I believe that concludes the mayor's comments.
Thank you. Head up to that kids' lounge.
That's right.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Do we have any resolutions, motions, or other items from the floor? Seeing none, under the consent agenda, we have item 1, approval of minutes, the regular council meeting of April 7th, 2022. Item 2 is approval of alcoholic beverage permit applications. Item 2A is a resolution granting an alcoholic beverage permit to the Friends of Rivertown on May 6, 2022 at 2015 4th Street, Kenner, Louisiana. Item 2B is a resolution granting an alcoholic beverage permit to Friends of Rivertown on May 20th, 2022 at 2015 4th Street, Kenner, Louisiana. That will conclude the consent agenda. I have a motion by Councilmember McKinney, seconded by Councilmember Wilmot. Council members, please vote. Councilman Hayes,
Yes.
Brannigan,
Yes.
Brennan,
Yes.
McKinney. Yay. Wilmot,
Yay.
Carroll,
Yay.
Sevier.
Yay.
Motion passes 7-0. Under the public appearance agenda, we have item 8, public hearings for final passage. Item 8A is a public hearing regarding resolution B17232, a resolution calling a public hearing to determine whether the structures located at 526 Salvador Road, Kenner, Louisiana, shall be abated by repair, rehabilitation, demolition, or removal. I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, seconded by Councilmember McKinney, to open the public hearing. Council members, please vote. Councilman Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney? Yay. Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Sevier?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. We're now in a public hearing. I believe the Code Enforcement Department has a presentation. If there's anyone in the public who can address the council after the presentation.
Good afternoon, Ms. Wilkins, thank you.
It is good afternoon, thank you. Let me make sure this is, can you hear me all right? Is it on? Great, thank you. We'll start with 526
Not now.
We'll start, I'm sorry, Tiffany Wilkin, Director of Inspection and Code Enforcement, Interim Director of Inspection and Code Enforcement. Code Enforcement has not brought any cases to you for demo. Obviously, you were busy recovering still from Ida, the events of Ida, the effects of Ida, but we are now getting back into our regular demolition cases. As you know, Lisan was an unusual case, and that's why that came before you. But now we are anticipating that our citizens will start repairing their homes, hopefully without us. Code Enforcement have to nudge them, but we're back on track for some demolition cases, and we have 2 here before you today, and we'll be asking for 2 more in the next council meeting or 2. These houses, these structures were identified prior to the August 29th date, and letters were sent to the owners, which were returned. We have 2 today, 706 Taylor and 526 Salvador Road. They were identified just prior to Ida as needing to be torn down, and of course we're getting back into the process. So the first one we'll start with is 526 Salvador. The structure in question is an elevated pier structure owned by Mr. and Mrs. Cornelius Daggs. We have, of course, the department has, if you want to start showing some pictures, the department has retained the services of a structural engineer, Mr. Frank Lang, I heard his name mentioned earlier, and he has rendered a report, and in fact does support our request that the
Ms. Wilkins, excuse me, I'm having a little difficulty, please, if you could be a little closer to the microphone.
sure. I was wondering whether you could hear me. I apologize.
Only when you get up close.
Okay, all right. I'm going to hold this file as well. In any event, Frank Lang did do a structural analysis of 526 Salvador Road on December 11th and presented us with the report and with the photos that you're being shown here. He observed upon visiting the property that the utilities had in fact been disconnected. The structure was severely overgrown with vegetation. He observed some wood rot. He observed that a tree had fallen on the rear section of the structure, causing roof damage. And it was his opinion that the effects of Hurricane Ida had caused even more damage to the structure. And he opined that the structure's lateral stability had been compromised due to the collapsed roof structure when the tree fell on it. So he has provided the city with a written report saying that recommending that the structure be declared a public nuisance and that it be abated by demolition. Do you have any questions about the photos you've been shown here?
Does not appear.
Okay. We've also, of course, taken an abstract of the property, and when we could not reach the title ownership, and we've checked it even this morning, and when we were not able to locate the owners of the property, the city of Kenner hired a curator, obtained services of curator. They have done their notices. I believe they're here today. Fantasy, Lamont Fantasy, Bilio Fantasy. They're here today to do their note of evidence to you all about their attempts to reach the owner. Contained in our file, of course, is the structural report. Contained in our file is their notes of evidence. Is Mr. Fantasy here? He is. Okay, come on up, Mr. Fantasy. He'll explain to you the efforts he has made in an attempt to reach the owners of this property.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Mike Fantasy. We were retained to represent the absent owners of the 526 property as well as the 706 property. You want to do 526 first? Is that what you're talking about? Okay. We did a search of the public records, the property records, court records, assessor records, to try and find out who any owners might be of this property or anyone else with an interest. It was owned by Clara Williams Daggs. We discovered Miss Daggs is deceased. She had actually inherited the property as her separate property. She was the widow of Cornelius Daggs, who's also deceased. Neither Mr. or Mrs. Daggs opened succession, and we cannot find any heirs. Certified letters were sent out in December. We received no responses. We also advertised this property on January 25th, January 26th, and January 27th of this year, and we received no responses from anyone with an interest in the property.
If you don't mind, I'd like to wait.
All right.
Thank you.
Council, please know as well that the Department of Inspection and Code Enforcement has posted a notice of today's hearing on the front door of the structure, notifying any interested parties that the hearing is today. At this time, I'd like to call out to the audience to see if anyone is here on behalf of Mr. or Mrs. Daggs or 526 Salvador Street in the city of Kenner. Hearing no one coming to the podium, the department would ask that this council order the demolition of the structure at 526 Salvador Road, and that you allow the Department of Inspection and Code Enforcement to make that happen and remove all the debris, and assess all of the costs of these proceedings, which are abstractors, curators, the structural engineer reports, as well as the cost of the demolition, which we don't know at this point, but we will have shortly. We would ask that those costs be assessed against the property on the public record, if you would order so.
Thank you, Ms. Watts. Councilwoman McKinney.
Thank you, Council President. I just have one question for you, Director. Is this, from the pictures, there seems like there's a structure that's a neighboring structure, maybe a house that is actually neighboring its property that's purple. Is that part of the said property, or is that a neighbor, I guess, or is that included in?
That does not appear to be the property in question.
Okay.
Does not appear to be.
Okay, so that's like a neighbor, but it's not, but any of there's like the last time you guys came, there was actually a neighboring structure on top of another house. None of that is in this instance. There is no, it's not impinging on any other properties, correct?
That's not my understanding of this property, but I will commit to you that we will look into that, and if that is the case, we will bring this back before the council.
Okay, I mean, I was just figuring.
My impression was not that it had fallen to the extent that it had fallen over, it just being compromised by the fallen tree.
Okay, and then, I guess just another question, you mentioned about the cost to be assessed against the property. Are you aware if any property tax has been paid on this property in the past 5 years? Or?
I will say that our abstracts typically include full information to that effect, and I did not see that there was a tax sale, for instance, to the city of Kenner or to the parish of Jefferson. However, that is not always immediately available on the website. The parish of Jefferson might be owed 3 years back taxes. It hasn't actually adjudicated it yet.
Okay, and then the same, could be the same for the city of Kenner as well?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Wilmot.
My question's more similar as far as Councilwoman McKinney's concerned, the back taxes. Do we know that the city of Kenner is owed any back taxes? And if not, who was the last person to pay taxes on the property?
I can get that information for you. I'm sorry, Liz Herring can obviously.
The taxes have not been paid. There is a tax lien against this property. It's adjudicated to the city right now.
When was the last time taxes for the city were paid?
It looks like 2014.
And who, do we
I can
know
look
who
up
paid
who,
them?
and Ms. Clara Day, so it might have been before she passed away. That might have been for you.
Okay, so it was the deceased.
Yes, so that would have been her final payment to the city
Thank you.
in 2014. So it's not, the abstract did not necessarily indicate that it was adjudicated to the city, so we may have some proceedings to revisit.
Councilman Carroll? Oh, sorry.
Thank
Councilman Carroll?
you, Mr. President. Thank you, Director, for coming today. Thank you for the work and everyone else that put into this. Obviously, the picture speaks 1,000 words, the way it looked. And also, I can tell you personally that the rear of this establishment has been used as a dumping area for people to bring excess everything there. So that is not on the people or Ms. Diggs or her husband after they're probably seniors, and after they may have moved away, people just use the opportunity. So from a safety standpoint, it has to come down. What is the date, when does it go into effect once we vote on this, that the tear down will take place? Is it?
First, you have to do your publishing, that's approximately 17 days if I'm not mistaken. The actual date that we can start issuing our work order as a department, now I do need to look into those tax issues and the adjudications, but provided that everything is in order, because there is a higher standard for a demolition of a house, it's actually the liability standard. So we have created new forms to make sure the city doesn't miss any steps, provided there are no problems with the tax adjudication issue. After 5 days that we have the receipt of your resolution, now of course we're sending that to a curator, but within 5 days of receipt of the resolution that you have passed, that's the appeal period for these types of demolitions. So after that, then we can proceed with the work, making sure we are told by our structural engineer that the utilities are disconnected. We need to make sure we have all the cutoffs, then we can start with the work order with our contractor. So it just depends on their schedule. But I would say reasonably 30 to 45, maybe 45 days.
That's perfect, because I'll have the address. I'll be able to speak with people that, all the attorneys that may not be able to reach out to different family members that are connected to Ms. Diggs, that I can do. I can go in the neighborhood and ask about that, and let the individual family members know this is what's going to happen. At some point, the monies that are owed will be collected. You will get that. If that's something you won't get that, I can at least get the taxes and the costs, estimated costs. You're gonna get an estimated cost to tear it down, right?
Probably be somewhere around 15.
Exactly. So you can, once you get it, you can sit, because you're gonna get it before they actually tear the work down, obviously.
I'll get an estimate, but no, not until afterwards will we get a bill.
Send me the estimate. I'll get that from the finance director about the taxes information, so I'll have a number. Then when I speak with people, I'll be able to address that from that standpoint, along with the time frame of a month and a half.
What you're referring to, Councilman, is exactly why I reinstated the notice on the door. Because as soon as someone sees our inspector going up there, leaving the notice on the door, the neighbors start talking, and of course, if they know any of the family members, that information might get back. Obviously, that's not what happened here, but I appreciate your effort in trying to find people, assist us in locating people to get this done.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I just have a better sense of getting that done than putting a notice on the door. I will be able to facilitate that. That's all I'm saying. So once I get that information, and I start speaking to people, I'll be able to give them numbers and give them dates and times. And then after that, we've done our due diligence as the city of Kenner, because it's always our position to give people an opportunity. If then nothing has happened, then that's what's going to happen with the building. Because we also have to think about the community, the neighborhood also, from a safety standpoint. So when you get that, I would appreciate if you give me that estimate, and I'll talk to the director about the taxes and put it all together and be able to speak to someone in the
So
neighborhood.
that family member will have 5 days to appeal, just so you know, from
Yes.
those of you. And also, we don't typically recover these expenses until the property is transferred.
Gotcha.
If we're lucky enough for it to be worth that much.
Yes,
Yes, sir, thank you.
gotcha.
Any more questions?
You said, Ms. Wilkins, what a lot of people don't know is Councilman Carroll didn't run again, and he's going to be NCIS Kenner starting after the June 30th. So that's why
you
he's
know, I gotta add it to my resume, man.
There
We
you
have
go.
some positions opening.
So thank you, Mr. President, thank you, Director.
There are a lot of houses out there that could be candidates for sure, so I hope you'll be seeing a few a month going forward as long as the budget allows.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add one thing. This is something that I've spoken to Ms. Floshi, the mayor, along with the community development, about opportunities for the city of Kenner to look at these properties, to be able to some kind of way work it out where we can put this back into commerce for other families to use. So that is a big plan to do that. I think that is far more better than to this, knock it down, walk away from it and not do anything. So I think that is, going forward, that's what we should do. Not only in this room, but across the city of Kenner, to be able to come up with a plan to do that. Particularly for buildings like this, where there doesn't seem to be any air, there doesn't seem to be anything that's been going on. So that is something I'd like to thank the mayor and Ms. Floshi about our conversation to do that. So we would definitely look into that going on after the previous year, moving forward. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Madam Clerk?
I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, seconded by McKinney, to close your hearing. Councilmembers, please vote. Councilman Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yay.
Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Segura?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, seconded by McKinney. Any discussion or approval? Seeing none, councilmembers, please vote. Councilman McKinney?
Yay.
Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Segura?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 8B is a public hearing regarding resolution number B17233, a resolution calling a public hearing to determine whether the structures located at 706 Taylor Street, Kenner, Louisiana, shall be abated by repair, rehabilitation, demolition, or removal. I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, seconded by Councilmember Wilmot, to open your hearing. Councilmembers, please vote. Councilman Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Segura?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. We're now in a public hearing, and the Code Enforcement Director has a presentation.
Council members, Tiffany Scott Wilton on behalf of the City of Kenner, Department of Inspection and Code Enforcement. With regard to 706 Taylor Street, this is a very, very similar case to the one you just heard. In fact, it's so similar, I thought our office had duplicated documents and I was reviewing the same as prior. Same thing, shortly before Hurricane Ida, the department had determined that this was a candidate for demolition, and on August 23rd started the proceedings. It was discovered that the owner, Mrs. Ethel Mae Johnson, was also absent, appeared to be absent. The certified mails came back, and the city proceeded to start the curator process. On December 11th, was conducted, when we resumed doing demolitions, the department resumed doing demolitions, we asked Frank Lang, structural engineer, to visit the property. He visited it also, as he did on this one, on December 11th, and his observations were at that property that the utilities had been disconnected. He observed that the front door was unlocked and there was, it's open to unauthorized entry. He observed that the structure was severely overgrown with vegetation. He observed wood rot. He stated that sections of the exterior siding were missing and exposed the wood frame members to the elements. He felt like the wood rot was compromising the structure's lateral stability. He had observed that a tree had fallen also on the rear section of the structure, causing that roof to collapse. And he stated that although the structure is still standing, its lateral stability had been compromised due to the collapsed roof structure, and it was his opinion that it's in imminent danger of collapse. He provided his report to us along with these photographs. If you have any questions about the photographs, please be sure to let me know. But based on this, based on the structural engineer's recommendation, the fact that we cannot find the owner for some rehabilitation of this property, The department recommends that this council allow us to take the necessary steps to declare it a public nuisance, have it abated by demolition. And we'd like that all the costs of these proceedings and the cost of demolition be assessed against the property.
Did you say you had a curator?
We do. I'll call him up and then we'll call for anybody in the audience. She's here. We've got someone here. Please introduce yourself.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan Davis. And my address is there?
Yes, ma'am, please.
I live in Texas now, so my address is Texas.
Okay.
It's different, but I lived all my life before Texas, grew up in 76 Taylor Street. So I'm the granddaughter of Ethel Collier, Ethel Johnson.
Ma'am, can you speak up a little bit?
If you-
I said I'm one of the grandchildren of Ethel Johnson. And she passed away in '06. My mom and dad passed away in 2013 and 2014. My mother, who the house wasn't in her name, has caused the problem because I had already been trying to, and I spoke to a code enforcer and have been trying to stay in contact with the situation and all the open sessions that we would need for the 11 grandchildren plus my mom is really financially like we can't afford it. And that's been the problem. We're aware of what's going on. My brother lives here. He keeps an eye on everything. He's been getting the mail. He let me know about this, so we just came out to let you know that we are aware of it. It's just financially, no one is really able to really take over, taking it down, building it back up. So that's been the problem for us.
And when's the last time you all spoke with Code?
I spoke with Code back in December of 2021, a gentleman by the name of Ken. We texted and emailed each other because I was letting him know, he said, just hold on. And he said there were a lot of, I think because of COVID, we weren't really meeting and having sessions, and I heard the lady say there that, now they're starting to get things done now and get all these structures that are, out of order, taken care of. So that was the last time that I actually was in contact, or as a text or a call, was speaking with a gentleman named Ken. I didn't get his last name.
That's fine. Could you say at this point, is it 30% close to being complete as far as the successions, or is it, or has there just been no groundwork?
No, there has been no open sessions. The other grandchildren, my mother, the four of us, we talked about it already. But the other grandchildren who verbally said they weren't interested. But I know an open session would have to happen for anything, to even happen with the property. So even whether they wanted it or not. So I had already had a real estate lady do an assessment of the property, about the worth of the property. And that cost me $300. I did that. And it's worth less than $90,000, $70,000, somewhere in that area when she sent me all the paperwork and stuff. So that's as far as I had gotten with anything. Because again, it goes back to the finances and being able to provide the funds. Now, another thing we were talking about was trying to, through Texas and everything, family Texas of the 11 grandchildren, to see if anybody financially is able and would want to participate in that process. And that's where it's kind of come to the brick wall and what people are able to do and don't really want to be a part of. Because most of us live out of state.
Ms. Wilkins, is it possible, or do you have any recommendations at this point now that the family has come forward? Is it something that you all could discuss since the conversations have been not ongoing for a while, that just maybe just, to give this family some options?
If it's council's pleasure, Council President, we can certainly defer this to another meeting for discussion with the family. I have not heard, however, any indication that this dangerous structure can either be protected or, shored up or, I haven't heard anything. I've heard 11 members. Who knows how many it really is, because that's 11 grandchildren. If any of them are deceased, then you have to reach their children, 11 successions or 20 successions, we don't know, but it would still be the department's recommendation, if it's the pleasure of this council for us to defer this for a meeting, to go back and talk with these representatives of the family. I'm really pleased they appeared today, that's a start, but it's still our position that it's obviously abandoned, it's obviously a blight, and our structural engineer has in fact said that it needs to come down. That would continue to be our recommendation, but again, we'll honor whatever this council rules. And sir, would you like to speak? I apologize. He's good. Okay, thank you. No, please.
Please step up to the microphone, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Elders Joseph. I was the last relative living there and keeping an eye on the appointment. I just wanted to say that I have been receiving others stating that my grandmother didn't owe any property taxes. She was exempt because the property had been there for, I'm pretty sure, close to 80 years. So there's no taxes due on that property.
Just 1 second, please. Councilman Segura.
Ms. Liz, can you tell us if that's correct?
So this property is still receiving a homestead exemption on the property. That's why there's no property taxes due. But if no one's living there, then they should not have a homestead exemption against the property. So there are no taxes due now, but it's because there is a homestead exemption being applied.
Right, they're not aware that she's deceased since
Yes.
2006, or else this probably would be a tax sale issue as well.
Okay.
And our curator is asking, I might give him a moment to do his note of evidence, since we only have potentially two of the heirs here, so there are other heirs that he has to make an appearance for, but he'd also like if they could state their names and mailing addresses for the record so that we can contact you.
Please come forward. Yes, sir. The curator is going to come forward. He's got some information that he's going to try to get from you all.
He has to do his note, since there are so many of you who are potential owners.
Mike Fantasia, again, we were retained as curator for the absent owners of this property. We did a search of the public records, including the assessor's records, mortgage conveyance records, the court records. We identified Ethel Mae Johnson Collier as the owner. We also identified that she is deceased, as you reflected, and that her daughter, Eula Marie Norflin, is that your mother?
Yes.
Yes, they did not own succession, but she would have inherited the property, a separate property. Ms. Norflin is also deceased as of November of 2014. We were able to identify 4 children of Ms. Norflin, a Miss August, a Miss Davis, Mr. Joseph, and a Mr. Norflin. There apparently are also some children with the last name Allen. Are they?
Yes. Yeah, my mother's 2 brothers.
Okay.
Each of them had, one had 4 children and one has 2.
Okay. We discovered the Allens on one of the records. Notice was sent to all of the individuals in December by certified mail to the address of the property. Mr. Joseph responded to our office. I believe you spoke with Ms. Villio in my office. After that, we also advertised the property on January 25th, 26th, 27th of this year. We have never received any response other than from Mr. Joseph, and I provided Mr. Joseph via email with notice of this hearing on April 6th of 2022, which apparently you received, thank goodness. I would ask, though, that either Ms. Davis and Mr. Joseph, actually, and if they know the addresses for Ms. August or Mr. Northland, if they can provide those names and addresses for the record, you won't have need of a curator any further with respect to this property.
My sister lives in Sheila August, rather, lives in Texas with us, with me, and she was in an apartment. I don't know her physical address, but I have to get that.
That's fine. If you don't know it at this moment, if that could be obtained. Councilman Carroll, did you have a comment?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. How you doing, Ms. Davis? Mr. Joseph, how you doing? Long time no see, man. And team before the pandemic. So I'd just like to give some comments for the property before and this particular property, just to give some context and some sense of ownership and some sense of community that, as Ms. Davis said, this property is over 80 years old. So from the perspective of people just looking at it, some people may get the feeling that people just neglected it. The lady, her grandmother and her mother, who obviously knew me and some of my relatives, this was their home, you know, and because they died, because of time, because of the weather, because of the hurricane, this is the reason why this property is in the state that it's in. So I'm always aware of that and considerate of that and understand the history that these people were taxpayers in the city of Kenner, valuable and supportive of someone like me. So I understand that. We all understand, we've seen the pictures, the building itself is in bad shape, you know. For whatever reason, it has never been taken care of after the owners, second and third generation were there after them. So with that being said, it is a nuisance on the neighborhood. We obviously, for safety purposes, for the people who live around there, we have to address that as well. So I am willing for, we talked about before the time frame that it has to go through, we say close to 30 to 45 days. We understand that there's nothing concrete that has been put in place by the family to address this. I understand that too. I am willing for a 2-meeting deferral, which will give us another 30 days, plus on top of that. But obviously, it gives an opportunity for the director to speak with the family in more detail and give them time to speak with the other family members to come up with a plan. But at the end of that time frame, the city of Kenner, the people of the neighborhoods, and then myself, we have to move forward to make this a situation that is great for the people who live in the neighborhood and for the family. Because once it is torn down, the property is still there. It's still, I think it's 2 or 3 years before the family members still have that time frame to reoccur to get the property back. So it just doesn't decide today that you no longer have an opportunity to get this building. But as you can understand the way that it looks, so we deferred 2 meetings, that's a month. Once we start the process to come back and vote on it, that extends a little bit, and then it's a time frame. So we're looking at 3-4 months before we actually start. And I want to be clear that we should tear this building down, without a doubt. But it does give you an opportunity to speak with your siblings, your nieces, your nephews, and everybody to come up with a plan.
Yeah.
And I believe at this point, this is the thing that we should do. We should at least provide this for your parents, for your grandparents, that opportunity for everyone else to get things together to do that. So I would ask for your support for a 2-meeting deferral. I would ask for the director to after.
Councilman, would you like to just amend this legislation to reflect 60 days and adopt it, and just, instead of it being on the effective date, you just make it 60 days from this? You're giving them 60 days, but you're approving this, then we're done with that?
Yes. So did you,
60
Ms.
days.
Davis, did you repeat that again?
Sure.
Yeah, you said 60 days.
It would be 60 days from the effective date of this resolution. We would add 60 days in here. So this would not be effective until 60 days, after the 17 days that it has to lay over as well. So you're actually looking at 77 days that they're going to give you before they proceed.
And
Right, so-
that's good, I appreciate that, because that gives us another opportunity to look at people's financial issues, because that's what's really coming into play here, is financial issues.
Yes, ma'am. So
And that's the biggest part.
So that's exactly what we're trying to do. And I never wanted to be the perception of people that the mayor, the administration, or the council was just not considering that. And we all have to consider people's finance situation. We have to consider we're going through hurricanes and everything else, and this longevity for things. So I believe that is fair, and it does give you time with the family also to come up with a plan. Your contact will be the director of code to make sure that you guys stay in communication before this comes, start moving forward.
That's good, we have someone to contact by email, that way we can have that conversation going on.
Yeah,
Somebody, that's why you were here today, because we really didn't know.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to give you my contact information. I don't know Mr. Jordan, had this still been involved. And I'll give you my card, and then you have my number too. If
Okay,
there's
well-
any questions that you'd like to ask me,
Yeah.
I'm obviously here to help as much as I can.
Yeah, because we've been talking about our family home, and honestly speaking, everybody wants to try to do something as adults to try to keep it.
That's fair.
So we have to try to work out some type of budget. Goes back to, everything goes back to the money and budget.
Yes.
So we have to work that out as a family and see how much participation we get.
Yeah, and that is something personal with your family y'all want to work out. From this perspective, we're going to do from the city standpoint what we will do. And then, I think together, that is the plan we will have. And I thank you and Mr. Jordan for coming to the meeting.
Thank y'all, I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Ms. Wilkins, you're,
Is there anyone else here to speak on 706 Taylor Street? Anyone else in the council chambers? Thank you,
Councilman
Council.
Wilmot has a question.
Of course, so we can walk after we go, or you want to say?
If folks, if you just want to hold on
I'm
one
gonna meet
moment,
with
in
them
case this
afterwards.
is directed.
Okay.
Ms. Wilkin, I just had a question, following up on Councilman Carroll's line of thought, what would that mean to you? I want to make sure we're clear on the record.
I'm gonna allow you all I'm gonna ask that you all, I presented a resolution for your consideration today that laid out, please recognize it as a dangerous building and blighted and in need of being torn down. Please, if you allow code enforcement to demolish it, we will do so within the timeframes that the law allows. And please allow us to assess all costs of the proceedings against the property. If you like, if you don't like my draft, that's okay. Whatever you'd like to do to change it, I will act within your scope. So if I hear that what you're changing is 60 days, that's all. We will track it for 60 days. We will track the deadlines, and then we will proceed in demolishing it at that time if it's not done.
So what would the owners or people who are in line of ownership, what would they have to do in order to, is there anything they can do to satisfy?
Sure. They can hire a contractor for demolition, or they can bring in a contract for repair. It's likely going to be a substantially damaged property in my opinion, but of course a contractor would have to take a look at it and let us know. If so, all systems need to be up to today's codes, as well if it's not in an X zone, it's going to be elevated. So all of those considerations need to come in. They can either get a permit to repair and begin working on it. They can get a permit to demolish, and of course with a contract from a demolition contractor, get all of the utilities disconnected, and they can do the work themselves within that time frame. And they've got about 77 days for sure, like Madam Clerk said.
I just want to make sure we're clear on that, and that the owners are here, they hear what the potential is and how to go about doing it.
Sure, and I'm gonna bring them back. Of course, the considerations are that they are two of many owners, and it's according to percentages who's gonna put up on money, and in my experience that it's typically something they ultimately just allow the jurisdiction to tear down because that's the get you from point A to point B. But we will see with this family, hopefully they can work it out.
And the reason why I did that is because this matter, if we pass it right now, it's not coming back.
It's not coming back to you,
Thank you.
unless you say so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Carroll.
I just want to thank everybody for their support, and thank you, and thank Ms. Davis again for coming, and Mr. Davis for coming today.
I'm sorry, excuse me. What does it mean not coming back to you?
So if we deferred it for 2 meetings, there would be no action taken by the council and nothing would move forward. What we're doing is we're still moving ahead with the demolition, but it will not be effective until the 77 days where the ball will start rolling.
Okay.
Hopefully, in the meantime, you all have conversations, and Ms. Wilkins, correct me at any point. If for some reason you come back and say, we're gonna repair it, the conversations with the code department is gonna be very, very important, so they're aware of what the process is and what you're doing. And if you get to that point, then code will come back to us to reverse the action we're taking today.
Okay.
Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
Oh,
No, sir, code does not come back to us. They simply work with the homeowner directly, and if they take action, then they don't proceed with the demolition, but it stays within the code enforcement department from here.
scratch that last part.
Okay, I got it.
Listen to the wise woman sitting
But if
there.
action is not taken by the property owners to abate, get rid of it or repair it, within 77 days, code's gonna move forward on its proceedings.
Yes.
Okay.
We're all good.
Thank you for making that
Excellent.
clear.
Yes, ma'am. And any more questions, please ask the council, because they're
I just had one other thing to add. I just want to make sure it's clear. Ma'am, you need to work with Ms. Brogan in order to make sure she knows what the progress is that's going on. I'm sure she's going to monitor it anyway, but at the same time, she needs to know what's happening, because if you're making these attempts to do it, she's the one who's going to have the authority to move forward with demolition or not.
Correct, correct. And that's what I said, you know, well, now I'm retired, so officially retired. So now that I have access and I can work on my computer at home, then I have access to getting in contact with you.
We're gonna meet for a few minutes.
Great, thank
See what we
you.
can do, Albert. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And lady.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you all.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. A motion by Councilman Carroll, seconded
Just
by.
one- Before you leave, what is the status? A couple of weeks ago, we talked about the wall that was leaning on the house. Has that been corrected?
Yes, sir. Not only large report, I believe I can say
I'm
you
sorry,
are.
Mrs.
Wait, that's
Councilman.
another matter we can't,
Just hold on, we gotta close this up.
let's finish this up.
Okay.
But I'll be glad to wait and answer your question if that's proper.
That's me?
It's actually.
No, ma'am, it's not, no, ma'am.
The matter on the floor right now is another
I
address, so
understand.
you may need to speak with her after the meeting, or ask her to just send you something, letting you know about this disposition of that. I'm sorry. I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, seconded by Councilmember Wilmot, to close your public hearing. Council members, please vote. Councilman Carroll?
Yay.
Segur?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney? Wilmot?
Yay.
Motion passes 7-0. Motion by Councilmember Carroll, seconded by Councilmember Wilmot to approve. Council members,
You gotta make the amendment at this time.
we've already clarified what it is. There's no amendment. The motion on the floor for approval is 60 days from the effective date of the resolution.
I don't
We
think
have
she
no
just
we
understood Tiffany saying that
We have no legislation on the floor. This is only a public hearing. Once the motion is made for approval, then the legislation goes for signature from there. This is, the only time that happens is when we have a public hearing that we've called before. We have nothing on the floor. So the motion is 60 days from the effective date of the resolution. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Council members, please vote. Councilman Segur?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yay.
Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 9 is ordinances for the sale, purchase, transfer, lease, and/or alienation of immovable property. We have none. Item 10 is opening of bids. We have none. Item 11 is reclassification of zoning for final passage. We have none. Item 12 is other ordinances for final passage. Item 12A is summary ordinance number 12,969. An ordinance amending ordinance number 11,971, adopted March 10, 2022, to replace the wording "or whichever is the longest period of time" with whichever is the shortest period of time in the sixth whereas and in section 2. I have a motion by Councilmember Wilmot, motion seconded by Councilmember McKinney. Any discussion?
Councilman Wilmot?
Yeah, this is an important tweak to the disaster pay legislation that we had a couple meetings back. And all it does is basically it changes it to the shortest period as opposed to the longest period. What that means is we have a 30-day period or the meeting, whichever comes first. And saying the longest period, it doesn't fit. It's not logical. What happened was when we had an amendment on the floor last time when we passed the legislation, we had it was at 5 days or 15 days. And when we changed it to 30 days, it just makes a lot more sense to make it the shortest period of time. And that's what it does. That way the council does have oversight. The other way, it was almost going to be an automatic 30 days, which didn't make sense.
Thank you, Councilman. Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Council members, please vote. Councilman Hayes,
Yes.
Bradigan,
Yes.
Brennan.
Yes.
McKinney,
Yay.
Wilmot,
Yay.
Carroll,
Yay.
Segur.
Yay.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 13 is resolutions and motions by council members. Item 13A is a resolution ratifying the appointment of Evan Imbrevia to the City of Kenner Civil Service Board in accordance with Section 8.02A7 of the Charter of the City of Kenner. I have a motion by Councilmember McKinney, seconded by Councilmember Wilmot. Seeing no discussion, council members, please vote. Councilmember Radigan,
Yes.
Brennan,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Wilmot,
Yay.
Carroll,
Yay.
Segur,
Yay.
Hayes.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 13B is a resolution recognizing the month of April as Fair Housing Month in the City of Kenner. I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, seconded by Councilmember Hayes.
Councilman, you wishing to speak?
I want to know if Mr. Morel is going to be addressing this legislation, and if he is, after.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Mr.
Al
Morales?
Morella, 4260 East Loyola Drive, 5th District, 50 years. I support this resolution, but I want to say this. If you guys are sincere about this resolution, there's a few things y'all need to look into. Number one, there is an ordinance in the city prohibiting short-term rentals in R1 residential neighborhoods. And I'm not saying it's going on, I'm not saying it's not. I suspect it might be. And we need, if so, we need to enforce this law because this is taken away from affordable housing from people who need housing if someone is renting rooms out in their house on a short-term basis. Okay? Now, the second thing is, I've already called my delegation in Washington, D.C. I don't know that there's any more people in the city of Kenner that's living in FEMA trailers, but as you all may have heard, they're going to start charging them rent, the people who are still in those trailers. And I expressed to my delegation, I don't see how in the world you can charge someone rent for something they already own. The federal tax dollars is what funds FEMA. And those trailers were built by FEMA. And they belong to the people who's occupying them right now because of this last storm we just had. So if y'all sincere, y'all look into this. And one more thing, I attend the Kenner Housing Authority meeting for one main reason, to make sure that the screening process of these people who are getting in these units is fair and equitable. That people who's not eligible to be in there shouldn't be in there. All they're doing is prevent someone who needs this program the chance to utilize it. So this is the thing that concerns me. And if y'all sincere, y'all look into the first two. Anybody got any comments, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morales. Ms. Shaw?
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for allowing me to come this afternoon to discuss fair housing. April 11, 1968, the Fair Housing Act was passed by Congress. It was 1 week after Martin Luther King was assassinated. This is an annual thing we do to just recognize that there is still discrimination in housing and to allow our government and our citizens to know that we're still working to eradicate that discrimination. One of the things that we're going to be doing, and I think the clerk may have passed out to you, is we're going to be having our first-time home buyer program. We're going to be working with our IT department to post not only the flyer, but the application that you can do online. Now, we, in a consortium with Jefferson Parish, we're in a consortium with St. Charles Parish, so we do get limited funds, but because the housing market is so much right now, we've increased it to $50,000 for the first-time home buyer as a subsidy. So we're hoping to help at least 4 families. I was actually in a meeting before this meeting with our Unity. They are the provider of our homeless consortium for New Orleans, Jefferson Parish, and the city of Kenner. And I was astounded to learn this morning in our meeting, our numbers of people, especially because of not only COVID, but because of the hurricane, our citizens in the region are paying approximately 61% of their income on rent. They're actually paying more than they do in San Francisco, and everyone knows the homeless problem in San Francisco is about 45%. In the New Orleans region, it's 61%. So these are some things that we're doing to help people get into homes. And not only that, we are still working with our consortium to see how we can eradicate people being homeless. We have just completed several rental programs during COVID. Until now, we had 4 rental programs in the city of Kenner. And we've spent over $1 million in keeping people from becoming homeless. So once again, I want to thank you for allowing me to come and to actually to recognize this annual feat that we do, but it's just not just recognizing it, knowing that while we're doing it, and some activities that we're going to take place in recognition of the fair housing. Any questions?
Councilman Carroll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Attorney Shaw, for coming today and to the recognition for the month of April for fair housing. It is something that the city of Kenner has always been at the forefront of, particularly for, in my opinion, the city will live and die on younger families who have opportunities to own their home. And for them to be part of this program, to be able to be property owners, property taxpayers for the city, we want to be able to afford them all the opportunities to do that. So to have these opportunities, we all look forward to that, and we need your department to do whatever it takes, along with the parish, to be a part of this bigger picture. And I want to thank Mr. Al for coming to the meeting and even mentioning the information about certain individuals who are kind of rogue and things happen. But that applies to every institution in the United States of America. Income tax, homes, whatever. There are going to be some individuals who will compromise the situation. It's going to happen. But I believe that the vetting process that the community development uses is just as good as anybody else in the country to do it. And that's all we can do. And when things are identified, then we act accordingly. So.
And thank you, Councilman, for saying that. Like I said, this is a program to help those. This is a program to help you get into your homes. Now, I worked in Jefferson Parish, and here there are all these people that try to take advantage of the system, and we have mechanisms in place for that. Also, I heard your earlier comments about helping people, and we have these property taxes. When I was in Jefferson Parish, one of the things we looked at was taking certain properties off the roll, so we can develop the city, because that's the thing. In New Orleans, you have people who are living in Lakeview, even though you can't get to the homes because of the streets have so many potholes, but younger families are still moving there. So we have to start thinking about things to be more progressive and getting younger families to come here. We have a lot of generational families in the city of Kenner. We want to continue that. The only way we can do that is to build affordable housing and make this a place they want to work, live, and play.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that is exactly why I mentioned that before about the other conversations about those properties. And to also to let everyone know, the focus should always be on a positive thing, helping people. The focus should not be on individuals who are trying to compromise the system. Because if you get caught up in that, you're not doing what you need to do for the majority of the people. So we are mindful of it. We are conscious of individuals reminding us about spending their tax dollars. We always want to do that, but the focus should be on supporting the city of Kenner's future with homeowners coming in and to supporting people for whatever reason may or may not be able to ever, or in their current situation, afford a home, but always has the hope that they can. So thanks again for you and your department and your support, as always. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman.
Any other questions?
Councilman Wilmot?
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. And as usual, it's always wonderful to have you come up and speak. The first-time home buyers assistance program that we're referring to, I just wanted, for the record and for the public, if you will, just kind of talk about it if you will briefly.
Well, what we do is we look for those people who are have a real estate agent and have a turnkey property they want to purchase. And what we do is we look at their income to see if they qualify for the federal government's funds. We work with the banker and a real estate agent to make sure like I said, the property's turnkey, that this person is eligible because according to HUD standards, you should not spend more than 30% of your income or more than your living, rent or mortgage. So we look at the ratios. We look at the front end ratio, we look at the back end ratio to see if they qualify for the program under HUD's rules, and if they do, then we send a conditional letter to the banker, to the bank to say that we will conditionally give this, it has to be an inspection of the home, of course. So once we get the inspection of the home, and then we send a final condition, and they send us a final closing disclosure. That closing disclosure tells us what the actual number is gonna be. It gives the homeowner 3 days to decide if they're gonna buy the home, but it breaks down everything for that homeowner. They took it from, it used to be the good faith estimate, now it's the TRED. So it gives more protection to the consumer when they're purchasing a home.
So the consumer could possibly get up to $50,000 credit towards
Toward the subsidy, and they never have to pay it back, they just have to live in the home for a time period. If you get up to $50,000, you have to live in the home for 15 years. If you fail to, you would have to repay the money. Matter of fact, this week we just recovered some money. It's not, we tell people all the time, this is federal funding, and we're gonna make sure that you do what you have to do, because there's some monitoring that goes into making sure that people don't, like I said, we just recovered thousands of dollars because someone was found not to be living in a home. Like I said, this is the point of the program, so people can be here and remain citizens of the jurisdiction.
Beautiful. And if somebody's interested in this program and want to apply,
They
how
can-
do they go? Who do they contact?
They're gonna call our Office of Community Development. We're gonna be working with IT to get this online, so they can apply online, and then they can call our office with any questions they may have.
Beautiful. And what, you have a phone number?
504-468-7588.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Hayes.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, you're saying you're trying to fund approximately 4 households here. What period does that cover? Do we do this once a year?
It's going to, when you approve the action plans, Councilman, on that last action plan, you approved approximately $200,000. So we give $50,000, it's only 4 families. Now, it doesn't mean you automatically get the $50,000, it just means that you can get up to $50,000. So when you approve the action plans every year, the action plan determines how many people we have. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. Ms. Shaw, thank you again. Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Council members, please vote. Councilman Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yay.
Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Sevior?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 14 is items removed from the consent agenda. We have none. Item 15 is the acceptance of contracts and similar matters approved by the mayor. Item 15A is summary ordinance number 12,963. An ordinance authorizing the use of Jefferson Parish contract number 55-20083, bid proposal number 50-136407 with Throne to Go LLC doing business as Event Room for the rental of portable toilets on an as-needed basis in an amount not to exceed $60,000 for the Department of Parks and Recreation. I have a motion by Councilmember McKinney, seconded by Councilmember Brannigan. Seeing no discussion, council members, please vote. Councilman McKinney?
Yay.
Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Sevior?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 15B, is summary ordinance number 12,964, an ordinance accepting the only responsibility received from Gremco Incorporated to supply HP 831 ink for traffic printer as needed in accordance with letter bid number 22-1997 in an amount not to exceed $20,000 for the Department of General Services. I have a motion by Councilmember Sevior, seconded by Councilmember Hayes. Seeing no discussion.
Excuse me, Madam Clerk, Councilman Brannigan. Yes.
Sorry.
Mr. Glorioso, can you go to the mic? it's obvious we have been replacing a lot of signs, especially after the hurricane. How long do these printer cartridges normally last? Is this a normal amount for the year?
Well, this is the ink to replace in the new printer that we just got up and running last year, so I really don't know. It's a brand new printer. But I don't expect us to use anywhere near that amount through the year. But we just ordered a backup set of cartridges, and they were pretty expensive.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Somebody that was up here left their earbud at the podium. I didn't want to touch it.
Thank you, Mr. Glorioso. Madam Clerk?
Councilman Wilmot?
Yay.
Councilman Carroll?
Yay.
Councilman Segur?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 15C, summary ordinance number 12,965. An ordinance accepting the only responsive bid received from Pennant Shop Incorporated to supply flags as needed in accordance with letter bid number 22-1998 and an amount not to exceed $20,000 for the Department of General Services. I have a motion by Councilmember Brennan, seconded by Councilmember Brannigan.
Councilman Brannigan?
Mark, I need you one more time.
Yes, sir.
The flag purchases here, that's an annual deal
Yeah,
for the city, and what
It's
is?
annual, it's citywide flags. Again, we use there's about 30 or 40 different flags throughout the city that are flying at all times. And we use this to replace them throughout the year.
Okay, all right, because it's like 454 flags.
Yeah, well, that's how many they have, and we don't use that. It's a not to exceed amount. We probably use 35, 40 different flags, but that's the number of flags that they offer.
Okay, I just want to make sure we weren't going.
No, we're not buying 450 different flags.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
1 second, Mr. Glorioso. Councilwoman McKinney?
Yes, actually, my question is for Liz. I'm sorry.
All right.
We did 15,000 last year, and we spent 13.
Okay, and how many, okay, so we've, 15,000
15,000 was the cap last year, and we spent 13 of that.
Okay, so how, okay, my follow-up question is, why do we feel like we need to increase the number of, from 15 to?
So the cost of the bid went up. Obviously, cost of everything has increased, so we're just showing the increase in that.
Okay, so it's just a cost of living.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glorioso. Sir, please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Thanks,
Councilman
Council. My name is Juan Schwartz. I live at 2008 Iowa Avenue. And my question is, where are these flags made? Do we have any idea? Because I'd like to see the United States flag made in the United States and not overseas. Mark? So maybe we might want to address that. I have no problem with anything else except for where.
So there's a difference. We have a public bid law, unfortunately, that we have to follow. So we're not able to say it must be made in America. But I do believe these flags were. It is a local shop here. Mark may be able to give a little more information, but we cannot make a vendor create something in America. It's lowest bid, so.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure where they are, but it's a local shop, Pennant Shop. They've been this many years here in Louisiana, so.
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Councilman Carroll?
Yay.
Segur?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yay.
Wilmot?
Yay.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 15D is summary ordinance number 12,966. An ordinance accepting the only responsive bid received from Traffic Commander LLC for the purchase of 100 Type 2 barricades in accordance with letter bid 22-1999 in the amount of $5,800 for the Department of General Services. I have a motion by Councilmember Wilmot, seconded by Councilmember Brennan. Any discussion?
Councilwoman McKinney?
Yeah, thank you, Council President. My question is for Liz as well. Is this a renewal contract? And if it is it comparable to last year or,
The traffic commander barricades is just a pure purchase, so it's not, yeah, we were in need of some, I think we were missing some, so Mark's just replacing.
Yeah, that's what it is. We lost a lot after Ida and during Ida. From, we put out temporary stop signs when the traffic signals were down, and they're made of plastic, so they break. Just to replace what we had.
okay, so we're just replacing what we had,
Yeah.
we're not buying any extra?
No,
Okay.
that should hold us for a good while.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Council members, please vote. Councilman Segura?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yes.
Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 15E is summary ordinance number 12,967. An ordinance authorizing the purchase of 833 Dare T-shirts, including shipping, at a cost of $5,846.10 from Creative Product Sourcing Incorporated, a sole source provider for the Kenner Police Department. I have a motion by Councilmember Brennan, seconded by Councilmember Hayes. Seeing no discussion, council members, please vote. Councilman Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yes.
Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Segura?
Yay.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 15F is a summary ordinance number 12,968. An ordinance authorizing the utilization of Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office Contract 21-DEC-1501 with Lamar Ford Incorporated and Courtesy Ford to purchase vehicles on an as-needed basis in an amount not to exceed $500,000 for the life of the agreement for the Kenner Police Department. I have a motion by Councilmember Brennan, seconded by Councilmember Brannigan.
Madam Clerk?
I believe we have someone from the audience, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Brown?
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Richard Brown, who live in District 4, Kenner. Notice this was submitted by the police chief. I did not see him. Is he present?
I have not seen you.
If not, perhaps someone else can answer this, or someone from purchasing. Is this essentially the same ordinance or the same type ordinance that we adopt just about every year to authorize the purchase of vehicles for the police department and for the city? Can someone answer that?
So the way this ordinance reads is just for the Kenner Police
All
Department.
right, this particular one, I did read it, this particular one does say it is strictly for the Kenner Police Department. This appears to be similar to the one we adopted about 10 months ago. I think it was June of last year, give or take a month, which initially was proposed to be for the police department, and it was for $1 million. But the police chief stated at the council meeting that was a mistake. It was actually supposed to authorize, it was supposed to be citywide, authorize the entire city to use the sheriff's office contract for the purchase of vehicles. And it's further my understanding that that ordinance, which was adopted last June, give or take a month, is the ordinance which the city, the administration used as its authorization to purchase all of those pickup trucks that were purchased right after Katrina. And my question is, from having read both this ordinance and the sheriff's office contract, and also the one for the previous ordinance, got two or three questions here. Number one, these are supposed to be for new vehicles. Is that correct? Can somebody tell me whether that's correct?
Mr. Brown, why don't you ask your questions and we'll
Okay, I will.
I think we have answers.
Yeah, question number one, is this supposed to be for new vehicles? I believe the contract says model year 21 and 22 and maybe 23. Second, don't they have to be Ford products manufactured by Ford? Those are basically my two questions. Doesn't this sheriff's office contract and the previous one require that the purchase be new vehicles and then they'd be Ford products.
So your answer to the city versus Kenner is this is for the Kenner Police Department, yes? Sir?
Correct.
As far as the new, I don't know that we,
Right.
yes.
The
Go ahead, Councilman.
Go ahead.
Please.
Okay, the contract, the contract that's in place, says that you can buy 2021 and 2022 vehicles, and it's split between 3 dealerships, Lamar Ford, Crescent Trucks, and Courtesy Ford. Does that answer your question?
Well, I think that was the one last year. I think the one this year is only for,
It's only
I
two-
think the
it's
years
only
may be
two
different.
dealerships.
And it's for Lamar Ford and one other Ford dealer.
Courtesy.
Courtesy Ford.
Councilwoman McKinney's pulling that up.
I think in most respects, it's similar, almost identical to the one a year ago.
Yes, I can answer that question. It is similar, and it's the same sheriff's contract that they utilized last year. They will be utilizing the same contract, but it's only exclusively for the Kenner Police. It does not, I'm not sure about the provision that it's only limited to Fords, but I believe it is limited to new vehicles. So,
And those 2 dealerships only sell Ford products. Is that
I
correct?
mean, assuming they do, I mean, they might get trade-ins and such that they may resell, but yes.
But if it's new.
But if it's new, it should not, it should only be Ford, yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Council members, please vote. Councilman Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yay.
Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Sevior?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 15G is a resolution approving amendment number 2 to the agreement with BLD Services LLC dated October 21st, 2020 regarding preventative maintenance of existing sanitary and storm sewers, increasing the agreement amount by $500,000 for a new agreement amount of the not to exceed amount by $1,150,000 for the Department of Wastewater. I have a motion by Councilmember Hayes, seconded by Councilmember Carroll.
Mr. Shriner, would you mind stepping forward and expounding on this, please? I figured.
The director's ready.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were pointing at Ms. Morella.
Jacket.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ms. Rowe. This is to add money to able to complete the collection system sewer improvements that were funded by Senator Talbot. We've already started the testing and some of the repairs. This is to ensure that that we have enough money to complete the repairs and the testing. Because once we go into further testing, we may find it's not just a point repair, that whole line may need to be replaced. So we want to make sure that we have the funding once we start the repairs to complete all the repairs.
Thank you. Mr. Morella?
Thank you, Joanne. First of all, if you don't find these problems that you anticipate, okay, with this testing, then I presume that this contract will be brought down. It will be reduced. It will be a reduction if this money is not needed. It's $500,000.
Right, there's still other repairs that need to be made. We have repairs on 2 Lane where we need the whole lines replaced, also Yosemite, so they would go to additional collection system improvements that need to be still made.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Joanne, and I know y'all put it as an amendment, but it's a change order, but that's okay. We know what it is. Anybody got any comments, any questions for me? Thank you. Thank you, Joanne.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Morella. Thank you, Ms. Wilsoni. Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Councilman Brennan?
Yes.
McKinney?
Yes.
Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Sevior?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 15H is a resolution to pay the invoice for Annie Washington Transitional Housing for the Department of Community Development. I I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll, seconded by Councilmember Sevior. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, council members, please vote. Councilmember Kenny?
Yay.
Wilmot?
Yay.
Carroll?
Yay.
Sevior?
Yay.
Hayes?
Yes.
Brannigan?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 16 is ordinances and resolutions in summary for first reading. Item 16A is summary ordinance number 12,970. An ordinance approving a street name change from Minden Avenue between 3rd Street and Mississippi River Levee in Hanson Police Subdivision, Kenner, Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, from the existing street name of Minden Avenue to the proposed street name of Center Street. Item 16B is summary ordinance number 12,971. An ordinance adopting the operating budget for the city of Kenner for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023. Item 17 is reports from the council and on special committees.
Councilman Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was a little tardy for the beginning of the meeting, and there were a couple of things I wanted to ask for everyone's prayers for two individuals. The first being Kerry K.K. Ridgely, who was a young man, a real young man, 38, 39 years old, that passed and gone on to glory at a very young age, that participated in sports, playing and coaching at the Buddy Lawson Playground and the Jesse Owens Playground, along with his children now, and who played at Bountiful, and one of his oldest sons is playing at Bountiful, so we're really going to miss him. Second, I'd like to thank Councilman Segura for mentioning Miss Burton, who also deceased and who has gone on to glory, particularly Miss Burton and her legacy in District 1 in the city of Kenner. Her and her husband, Mr. Burton, were the first owners of a drugstore. And it was not only a drugstore, it was a grocery store. It was the Walmart and the CVS before there was a Walmart and a CVS, particularly for the District 1 community, for everyone, particularly the African American community. And Ms. Burton was an educator, over 40 years being a teacher. And as I said before, not only Ms. Burton, but particularly all of the teachers that taught, and many of them in District 1, not only taught, but they lived in the community. For a young man like myself and the many young ladies, their job as teachers obviously were at school, but when they came home, they lived in the neighborhood. So you were on call your entire life, Monday through Sunday, with these individuals to ensure that your education not only began and ended at the end of the day that the bell rang, but also the responsibilities that they instilled in you, and particularly Ms. Burton. She was a strict disciplinarian. There was no doubt about that. She was a fire compared to Mr. Burton, the ice. And she didn't take any back talk. She didn't take any excuses. Until I became older, I was able to understand that and appreciate that, and to realize her responsibility as an educator was not just so much for the, A, B, C, D, and math. It was about me being a responsible young man, me growing into an adult, me being a father, me being a provider for my family in the future, and also to be able to take a place like her, because she was the first elected, not only the first elected African American and the first female. So for her Me Too moment started many, many years before what we are in right now, particularly for the people within our community. So, she is one of those persons, many of our educators that set the stage, that grew up in the era, with little opportunities, that grew through the civil rights era, that understood what would be responsible for someone like me and my responsibilities, and for all of us. And she just didn't back away from that ever. And I can be appreciative of that right now, many of us. So Ms. Burton is gone, but will never be forgotten. Her husband, Mr. Burton, is still living. And I definitely appreciate Mr. Burton as much as Mr. Burton, because they were a team. Wherever you saw one, you saw the other. I think they were married for like 69 years. You can only imagine that, to love a person and to be with a person that long. And they never had any children, but I think that helped Because had they had children, they would have been able to focus a lot on us. And because they didn't have children, all of that extra time was focused on every little kid, boy, girl, black, white, whatever that came to that store, and had you prepared to be responsible, to be respected, and to understand that you had more responsibilities than just coming in there and buying a piece of candy. So, Ms. Bird, we love you, we're gonna miss you, and we look forward to doing a tenth of the job that you did with us, with our children and grandchildren. So thank you very much for their prayers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Very nice, Councilman. Councilman Wilmot?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would just like to welcome two gentlemen in the chambers who are councilmen-elect. First, we have Mr. Ronnie Swarth, who is going to be coming in July 1st, Council District 2. And then secondly, we have Mr. Joey Lahat. He's coming in as councilman-elect, Council District 3. Thank you both gentlemen. Welcome aboard.
Clerk?
Yes, sir. Item 18 is new business. We have none. Item 19 is unfinished business and a motion to reconsider or remove from the table position. We have none. Item 20 is persons wishing to address the council on special subject matters.
Mr. Martin Short? Sir, are you on the list?
Yes.
Okay.
I signed up, David Prentice.
Okay, well, we have a list, we go in order, we'll call you, Mr. Short? What's the left? Mr. Greg Taft?
Greg Tapp. This time I'm going to say 5th District, since everybody doesn't want to use their addresses no more. I got just a couple things to actually plead, beg with the council to please look at the budget, please ask the administration questions, please do your due diligence so we don't have the same debacle we had last year. Other thing I want to ask is that this committee is supposed to be looking for what to do with the properties and the location. Please do the job because this is important. You got the committee I think at the last council meeting or council meeting before. I'm surprised you haven't had the first meeting yet. But it really needs to start moving because it looks like we're relying on the administration to do all the legwork. And then we don't agree with their legwork because we haven't really pursued it. I'm asking you, and I'm begging you, please, work it out, work through the committee, wherever you got to work with, because I agree, if you want to get FEMA, when FEMA says we're ready to start pulling the trigger, anybody in insurance knows the more you're prepared at that point when they're ready, the more you're going to get done. And it won't linger out for years and years and years. So I beg you to do that. And the other thing I want to say is, I want to thank all the employees of Kenner for what they've been through and what they have done for this city. I think it's admirable, and they've shown that they want this city to move forward. And I would personally thank them for doing that. And I do appreciate everything all the employees of the city of Kenner have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck. Mr. Almarella?
Almarella, 4260 East Loyola Drive, 5th District, 50 years. I got no problem giving my address. I want to talk about the closure of the Esplanade Mall. I want to know what the future is of that mall, and I also want to know what went down without $250,000 in unpaid property taxes that they owe the city of Kenner. Now earlier, Councilwoman McKinney, you were talking about taxes on some of these properties that y'all was doing a presentation on, okay? $170,000 of that $250 goes back 30 years with that model. So you can answer my questions later. Anybody can answer those questions. You can answer them later because I got some more on the agenda. Okay, the next thing, I want to challenge Lee Zurich to meet me anywhere, anytime, any place for a debate. The job of a reporter is to be fair and balanced in their reporting. For 3 months, he did investigative reports on issues facing our city, which they deserve to be investigated. But there was one thing he eliminated, and then talk about it all. The press conference that took place on February the 3rd. And I want to invite Mr. Zurich to either come here, because I think he owes the people of Kenner an explanation why he didn't touch that one. Either here or anywhere he wants to meet, as long as it's a public place and we on the record. Next item on the agenda. Election day. Tomorrow is the last day of early voting. People of Kenner, get out and vote. We got issues on the ballot. One council district needs to be decided. We got tax issues on the ballot. And I want to say this. I support law enforcement 250%, but I also support accountability of our tax dollars 300%. So get out and vote, people. Anybody got any comments, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morello. Mr. Brian Miller?
Brian Miller, 2121 Indiana Avenue, District 2. I guess my question's kind of directed more towards the chief, fire chief. But observed 2 videos or 2 comments that was put out by city government last week. One of them was with a video on YouTube of the fire chief with Don Robinson, the director of fire service from the parish, saying that we had a recruit class in learning CPR. Is that recruits that are currently in a current recruit class, or was that a refresher course?
No, that's, I'll address that.
Okay. And then the second one was, another thing put out was that our fire department was going through Narcan training. Is that something that just started out here in Kenner? Because it's been in process for like 5 years, all the departments have been. And the reason I ask this question is, I believe that's kind of what I call a political propaganda perception. They give a perception to the people that, the unknowing public, what's really going on. CPR has been an ongoing thing in the fire service. Narcan's been a training going on in the fire service. So to add to that, my question would be, what are we doing for our citizens when it comes to the EMS service that we have here in the city? Because throughout the parish, it is a delayed service. Our policemen and our firemen are constantly having to respond to medical calls because the EMS service is, so rather than putting out a video of we're training in CPR, what kind of plans are we doing as a city administration, whether it's the mayor or the council or the chief, to better our EMS service for our citizens out here? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chief?
Thank you for mentioning, stating that, sir, what's his name?
Brian Miller.
Mr. Miller. Yeah. No, the class that you've seen actually was a presentation to the, I'm trying to talk to the mic and speaking to you. But the presentation that he's speaking of, last year we put on, the Kenner Fire Department was the lead department.
That way you don't have to turn around.
Training, thank you, training the parish firemen. The parish never did a joint class. All of our departments in this, what, 13 different departments, we all are too small to host and train our members individually. So it's easier for us as a parish to look at a certain class, a certain time, and we all bring in all the people we need and train them at that time, instead of trying to individually hire 1, 2 people here and there. So last year, I brought that to all the parish chiefs, and Kenner spearheaded that with during the training. What you were seeing was the beginning of the second class
that we're doing that's training firemen, not just for Kenner, but the entire Jefferson Parish. And actually, we have a guy from Clackamas Parish in that class also. And the Narcan training has been around for some years, and there was video of us doing Narcan refresher more than anything else with the with Tulane University that supplies the Narcan, or Tulane that supplies the Narcan for the city. We also, if you're not aware, have, because that is a major issue within not just Kenner, but every community throughout the country with opioid addiction and the deaths that's resulting from that. And Station 39 on Vintage is one of the places that members of the community, if they have a loved one that's suffering from that addiction, can go receive free Narcan from. So if that ever occurred where they needed to administer it to their loved one, they could pick up that one for free. But the training was just, we had the new guys that we've been bringing in over the past year that we need to make certain that they were trained in that also. So that's where that come from. The EMS division, now how much time I have? My 3 minutes up? Because it's a long one. All right, EMS has been a problem for a lot of years. It didn't just start. It's been an issue since the 80s when I was in the EMT going through paramedic training, that they realized that the shelf life for a paramedic in a major city is only about 5 years. So because of the result of nobody in these positions that I'm in now and that's been here for years and years, not addressing that issue, we've reached a point of shortage. That's why you don't have enough EMTs and paramedics on the units and putting burden on police and firemen to try to pick up that slack. And we are addressing that issue. I've been in talks with many, the hospitals, Oxnard, Kenner, police department here, this administration for months to set up some type of system. And part of my budget, and why you guys will see my budget go up tremendously, my ask in my budget tremendously, is to put in sprint units so that fire-based EMS medical response, we can provide better service to the community, a higher level of pre-hospital care for the members of the community instead of just the MR level that we are working at currently. You realize I brought in the doctor as a medical director in order to relieve some of the stress on some of the patients, because when those fire trucks roll to a medical call to help someone, once we make patient contact, we're on a medical call, we cannot relinquish that patient contact without giving it to a higher medical authority, right? You're aware of that. So even if the house next door catches fire, we're stuck treating, and we're trying to address all these issues. But these are issues that's been around for decades within the first responder service, fire, police, EMS, recruitment and retention, right? And those are issues that we're addressing now, that I'm trying to address. And a lot of these issues will take more funding from our budgets to address these issues. And it's not the public's fault. It's the people who sat in leadership roles within the first responder system that didn't address the issue decades ago when they saw the issue coming and didn't do anything to eliminate that derailment of this train. And that's where we are.
That's really what my comment, it's not so much, I was most recently a first responder fireman,
right,
and I come from being a sergeant with the sheriff's office. So I'm aware of what we do and what responsibilities we have. But there's general citizens that don't know that.
Right.
And that's the information I want to see get out. I know it, all the policemen and firemen know it, but maybe Ms. Jones and Mr. Smith don't know it, and that's the ones I want to see more educated, not just
right,
a YouTube video that we was at the secure class.
And Brian, Chris Fortunato, Director of Kenner Media. Brian, you and I have known each other for 30 plus years. Knowing your experience in both law enforcement and fire protection, first responder, and what you just said about the average citizen not understanding, not being aware of what our fire department does, most of us are probably aware that our law enforcement officers are trained and equipped to apply Narcan in very terrible, dire circumstances when necessary. But a lot of people don't understand or realize that our fire department has undergone this training as well. And so it's not propaganda. This is awareness showing the public
what our fire department, first responders do every day. It is not propaganda. So we're just making aware through the city resources and platforms of what's going on with our first responders.
The reason I call it propaganda and the perception is because that's what, did you do the video of him with Don Robinson?
My department did.
Okay, well then I'll apologize to you because I thought it came from the parish, because the parish is famous for putting out perceptive videos and information to make the public think things are okay when it's not. Do I know that Narcan is being administered by? I've had to actually do it more than one occasion as a fireman. So that is good. And I want that information out to the public to know that our policemen and firemen are here to serve you as best they can. But not to make it seem like they just started that training. If it was a refresher class.
Council Chairman, isn't this a discussion that we had off to the side?
Yes.
Well, and just in closing, Brian, you know I am 1,010% supportive, would take a bullet for our police, our firefighters, our first responders. So this will not be the last time you see those types of awareness videos informing the citizens of Kenner and the public of what our first responders in Kenner do. So it won't be the last time you see, but it is not propaganda, period.
Thank you, Ms. Fortunato. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Richard Brown?
Thank you, Mr. President. Richard Brown. I'll get my address, 824 Sessions Lane in District 4. The reason that I asked the questions I did a while ago about the item on today's agenda for the purchase of vehicles, authorizing the purchase of vehicles, is it's to purchase vehicles utilizing the JPSO, the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office contract for the purchase of vehicles. And as we determined here, and it's obvious for anybody who reads the actual contract, this is for new vehicles of certain model years, and they're Ford products. And they have to be purchased for one, last year was one of 3 dealers, this year is one of 2 dealers. My concern and my reason for asking those questions is that this ordinance and the contract are virtually identical to the one the council adopted about 10 months ago, I think in June, but I may be off by a month. And that's the ordinance that the administration relied upon in buying that $1 million worth of used pickup trucks right after the hurricane, claiming it was an emergency, and that ordinance, which this council adopted 10 months ago, authorized it. That ordinance did not authorize it. That ordinance was just like this one, except this one's limited to the police department. That one was citywide. But it had the same requirements. It had to be new vehicles, specified model years, and Ford products, and bought from certain dealers. Now, they were, as I understand, they were bought from the Mark Ford. At least most of them, I don't know about all of them. But they were not all Ford products, and they were not new, and they were not all within those model years. I would like for somebody from the administration, the mayor, the CAO, or the city attorney to explain to me how you can justify using that ordinance last June, or whatever it was, for the purchase of all those vehicles after the hurricane. If it was an emergency, our city charter provides for the council to hold emergency meetings. This council can hold emergency meetings on 24 hours notice and approve things with a supermajority with the 2/3 vote. You know, so there was no need to bypass the council. I'd like to know what the justification is for bypassing the council and buying those trucks that were not bought pursuant to the sheriff's office contract as the charter required.
Are you finished, Mr.
Yes,
Brown?
I'm finished.
Okay, I'm going to say this, that at this time, I'm going to ask that we don't address your questions, because of part of what we're going to be going through very soon with the looking into matters of the hurricane pay. So,
Council Chairman. but the information Mr. Brown gave was incorrect. So we would like to, for the record, state that's not the contract that was used.
We'll stay away from hurricane pay,
Right, okay.
if that's all right.
Yeah, this is a different.
The contract, thank you, sir. The contract of reference was not used by the administration to purchase. We used the emergency power under the declaration of emergency. As we sit here now, there's still $1 million in that contract to be available to be used for, you are correct, new vehicles. The reason this discussion came up because the conversation was how shocking it was that we had bought that much in vehicles. Yet it could not be all that shocking if the council had approved $1 million just 2 months before. So the contract you referred to was actually not used, and there's still $1 million. Is that correct? Still $1 million there available. The contracts, the vehicles were purchased. All of those dealerships were contacted, plus other dealerships, because they were trying to find any trucks at all. They would have loved Mr. Brown to be able to buy new vehicles, new Fords during the storm. But as you've heard from Mr. Melvin, as recently as the last meeting, they're nowhere to be had. If we could find them now, we'd buy them right now. So I understand the concern. The concern is there's $1 million of vehicles that were bought, but the representation that that contract was used is not correct.
I appreciate that, Ms. Fosher. The information I was given is that that was the justification. Perhaps it was not, but that's what I was told. But I haven't, even if they use some other emergency power, I'm very much concerned the administration spent that much money without going through the council, when the council can have emergency meetings on practically no notice.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. David Prentice, if you'd state your name and district you live in for the record, you have 3 minutes, sir.
David Prentice, 3237 Iowa Avenue. And I'd like to speak about something you sort of touched on a little earlier. Lake Town, to me, is the most beautiful part of Kenner. Okay, I was out there recently, and I needed to go to the bathroom. And the bathrooms at the boat launch are bolted shut, and the bathrooms in the concession stand are locked, and there are 4 porta potties, 3 of which don't have door latches, and the 4th of which you don't want to go in. So I surely hope that some of the porta potties that you're authorizing the rental for will go out to Lake Town, because it's a beautiful area of Kenner, and there are people out there all the time, and there's nowhere to go to the bathroom. Okay, that's the first part. The second part, at the boat launch, I have a little boat. I like to occasionally go out and launch my boat. And a few weeks ago, there was a low tide, and I couldn't believe it went down. It's all mud, except for one little narrow place, maybe 8 or 9 feet wide, and you can't even turn your boat around. Please, dredge that out. I'll tell you what, if the city of Kenner has a dredge, I'll volunteer to do it. I'm retired. And if you say, well, you're not authorized, okay, pay me $1 a year and hire me. I'll go out and dredge it. But it's deplorable out there. The mud is just under the surface of the water the whole way around. We need to dredge that out. And then the third thing is there's this nice concession stand out at Lake Town, which is shuttered right now. And I don't know what the condition is on the inside, if it was damaged in the hurricane or what. But that should be reopened as a convenience to the city of Kenner. And also, you could make enough money to pay for the salaries of maybe a couple of people to work in there. Okay, so please, porta potties at the boat launch, porta potties at the concession stand, reopen the concession stand, and please dredge the boat launch. Call me if you need somebody to sit in the boat and do it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Foshee.
I'm sure you've had enough of my responses. Yes, so a couple things. Number one, vis-a-vis the dredge, the little slip you're talking about, the 9 feet, that's what we dredged out. We are waiting for the breakwater we put out there. There's a construction going on that's going to have a rock jetty. It's going to keep the skid from silting in, because what happens, particularly when they open the spillway, is that just fills right up. So we literally used the dredge we do have. It's kind of small, but we could use it. And we dredged out that 9-foot wide swath deep enough, and that was largely so that we could get emergency boats launched. But as soon as that rock jetty, it's a Jefferson Parish project. They're 100% support of us. It's going to happen. Until then, that's the one little slip that we've got, and Mr. Melvin can tell you they're going to keep on it to try to at least keep it 9 feet wide, right? So that we have some ability to get out.
Porta potties, Mark, yes, porta potties going out there? Yes. Okay, porta potties, yes. And then the issue with the concession stand. The city has a recreational lease with the state. That's not really our property. It's owned by the state. The rules under a recreational lease is you can have no commercial activity. So when we did have it, it was a fabulous benefit to the citizens, but it violated the contract. That was brought to our attention when we were attempting to negotiate the Atlantis project, which you may have read about. The Atlantis project is a group coming out to develop it more, and when they realized we actually had some commercial activity, small though it may be, commercial activity, they said you can't do that. So that once it got shut down, it never got reopened. But I think we'd at least do something, I'll talk to these gentlemen, about the bathroom situation.
Please.
And then hopefully when Atlantis comes, there'll be plenty of concessions for everybody.
I had to go down to Walmart to use the bathroom.
No.
And all of the mud is silted in.
Yes, sir.
Last time it was pumped out just on the other side. I don't know if this would be practical. If that would be of any use for a garden soil or whatever,
Right.
sell it to a gardening company. Have them
There
pump
you
it
go.
out and sell it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bosher. Mr. Matthew Hotard? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Hayes, pardon me.
Mr. Mayor, was there a situation that the parish had monies that we could use for the boat launch? I was told one time it was about $4 million.
So there has been some monies that have been used for the boat launch. The rock jetty that Ms. Boshi's talking about is in question. Some of those monies were coming from Go Mesa. And a conversation with our parish councilman probably about 3 or 4 months ago, that was kind of on hold. So we'll have to check again with the parish office and see where those things are, because Go Mesa, look, I was keeping my fingers crossed when we were approached with this, but Go Mesa usually goes to Lafitte and Grand Isle. They had worked out to get some stuff for the East Bank levee area, such as District 4 of the parish and District 5 of the parish, which meant that Jennifer Van Rankin and Dominic Estrada would share in that, and we would receive the benefit of it from Bonneville, from the New Orleans line, all the way to St. Charles line. We'll check on the status of the rock jetty, keeping our fingers crossed we still get that, because that's going to be the only thing that stops the silt from coming in. That silt will continue to come in. Every time they open that spillway, you're going to have the city of Kenner's boat launch is going to have that consistent problem. The dredging that we did on that one slip that Mr. Prentice was talking about, it is narrow, but it's all we could afford to do to get it done, because we actually, if we'd have hired a contractor to do it, or if we'd have paid for the machine, which we paid for the machine is my understanding, it was the same cost. So we have the dredging machine, which means that I'm going to speak with Kenny Melvin, this will make him real happy, after this meeting, to get back out there and re-dredge even that one slip again. So we'll keep the maintenance going. The end product will depend on the parish with the Go Mesa money, which I said, I'm not saying it's stopped, but it's a little bit of a hold to it. Some discussions you and I, Councilman Hayes, we've had, and I'm glad you brought it up because it's able to give us more info to the public.
Well, sir, you're totally right. I think we all agree with you. There's no reason why we couldn't agree. And I think under the new administration, you're going to see things happening. Politics are politics.
I'm willing to give you $3 if you could use the machine.
Absolutely.
And we'll sign you on for 3 years, get that place.
I'll do it.
Mr. Hotard? Could you state your name and the district you live in? You have 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Matthew Hotard, 66 Red Oak Drive, Kenner, District 5. I came up here and spoke last month. I'm with the fire department, 14 years, and I'm also with the Kenner Firefighter Association. Thought I knew where I was going to start when I got up here, but after the last discussion, there's a lot going on in the fire department, a lot. After the last meeting you all had, we weren't able to attend. I can tell you that listening to the fire station, it's a rough thing to hear, because we are in a rough state to begin with as a department, financially. I think that moving forward, I know I spoke before about this being a progressive department, it wouldn't be right for me to come up here and not say that I think now is really the time for the council to consider that we need to get away from taking from the general fund from the city. I mean, again, our mills generate roughly $5 million, and even if it's over that, it rolls back into the general fund regardless. we keep going back to the fact that we don't have money, we don't have money, we don't have money. And it's really hard for us in the station to hear that we're not getting a station, or that the station's gonna take longer than was told to us, or that we were led to believe. Our starting salary is at $8.92 an hour. I mean, we have neighboring departments that are in the teens, and we can walk across the street to Chick-fil-A and Cane's and make $13, $14 an hour. People that do this job do it because they love it, and it's because it's a calling. But nevertheless, to hear that we are now having to fight even harder, or that we're even more of a deficit as a department that is severely underfunded, it's rough. I'm telling you that it's rough to hear that. I think now is the time to really discuss whatever it takes to help fund this department so that we don't rely on the city's money. I mean, I heard the number, I heard the $8 million, and that's great. I'm sure there's a lot of departments in the city that could use that money. But if there's any way to alleviate some of this problem with the department and our salaries, our trucks, to help us get stuff to where we're not constantly pulling and not constantly wanting and talking about serving the citizens, if we could tell him the shape that our equipment and our trucks and our stations were in, I'm sure he would be just as upset as he was about the medical stuff, which we are trained, sir, and I know they told you that, but it's just rough to hear, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, and I keep repeating myself, but it's because I'm trying to impress upon you that we truly do need the funds to run this department properly. Our chief put in for a budget. I really have no idea what is in that budget. I know it's going to be a good amount, but again, those funds, the problems that are right now, that we need to fix and can fix right now, I ask that be looked at, because we are losing firefighters. I mean, in the past year and a half, we lost six people to different departments. And that's a hard thing to hear too, because those are our friends, those are the people we work with, and that's not just a brand new guy, this guy's been here for some years. And the truth be told is that they left for financial reasons. It's not because they don't love working in the city and they don't like the station, they don't like where they work. And I'm just telling you these things, and I'm not sure if anybody tells you that. And so I just wanted to be honest and can tell you that. And I just think that we really need to look at funding the fire department properly, because that would at least alleviate some of the money from the general fund, and we keep us up to date competitively with salary and also with our equipment working properly. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
And for your service.
Thank you very much.
See no other people wishing to address except for the chief.
When you said $8 million, I saw his eyes really big.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. It's actually good to see some of these young firemen getting involved. Instead of me coming up to the podium and stating all the problems and trying to address all the issues that we've heard over the past couple of years from members of the public, you know, tell you you've seen the videos and the pictures and these sorts of things as far as the fire service goes. And I'm just glad these guys, I didn't ask them to come, you know, but it's good to see, for you guys to hear that we are facing a lot of problems within the department due to lack of funding within the service. These guys start off at $8.92 an hour, you know, and that's been that way since 2004. So part of my budget, like I told them, I'm putting in to bring them up to a decent wage to make these things happen, as well as the equipment that should have been retired some years ago, as well as the repairs and the rebuilds of the fire stations. They mentioned the $8 million that we have, and I hope you seriously consider putting that towards Station 38 so we can get that built for these guys. The day I brought the trailer to the property for these guys, I apologize to them, because I didn't want them in the trailer. We needed them at that location because we were pushing that time limit by having them so far out at 39. And we lose so much coverage by not having that station built. And with our rating coming up, we need to make certain we do that too for that section of the community, District 1, that's involved, that station protects. So that, you know, if we do have the extra funding in the budget, if the funding that was supposed to be there that's not there, that's, you know, all this was in place before I got here, that we need to make certain that we can build this fire station for these guys and get them out of the trail and protect that area of the community. So you'll be hearing a lot of details with when I submit my budget, because it does have a lot of stuff in there. In addition to the pay raise with the medical services that you heard, Brian mentioned that the community needs that we respond to. So I just ask you to give that some consideration going forward.
Thank you, Chief. See no one else, Councilman Carroll.
Did you forget about it? Forget about it.
I looked over there and you blended in with that wall in the back with that coat on, and
Oh, that's it. Okay.
did you roll in the paint?
Thank you, Mr. President. My comments, hopefully they're quick, but it's relating to a positive, and I'll say the negative after. The positive is the situation that is in Councilman Segura District with Build Strong America and the Drew Brees Foundation. As we know now, the training, which is to train young men and women to be able to work in the workforce of construction, to be able to support all of the construction projects that will be going on in the greater New Orleans area, which is great. And I got involved through my other employment, which will include the Department of Corrections. It will include young men and women who are going to schools that they may have been put out or dropped out of school. But the reality is they are able to learn a trade free of cost to be able to be part of the construction and the rebuild in the city of Kenner and the greater New Orleans area. So this is fantastic. I can go over earlier with the police department, with their probation and parole, who has an office right on the corner of Williams and Veterans Highway, where they support the men and women who had some challenges but are coming out of that. All of that is the positive part. The positive part is they have started in that strip mall for the classes. The part that is a little bit disingenuous is, they had that grand opening, they had the ribbon cutting. All those support that we had from the Kenner Police, from myself, from the state of Louisiana and everything to get started. We even scheduled them along with the ladies and the clerk to come in on 2 different occasions that we had to pull because they weren't ready to get started. And my only request was to let us know to schedule it again. Well, that never happened. And even to add insult to injury, it never happened that they got back with us. And they had the grand opening and the ribbon cutting. They didn't call Councilman Segura. They didn't call the mayor. They didn't call me. They didn't call anybody in the city to say they were doing it, which was a little bit disrespectful. I mean, at least give the courtesy so we can know to share with our community about it. You reached out to other municipalities, but nobody from the city of Kenner. So I have been talking about it to different people, and obviously nobody knew about it. So that is something that was really annoying, that they didn't have the courtesy to reach out to us for us to support our community. I'm glad that it started, and from this point forward, I hope it can be positive. But I had to say that. I normally wouldn't say that, but I had to say that they just didn't consider us for a building in the district, in the city of Kenner. So I will have future conversations with the Build Strong committee, with the Drew Brees committee, with the building committees around the greater New Orleans area, that they should come here and give a presentation to the citizens of Kenner and to give the specifics about the program. So now that I got that out, I want them to hear it. I want them to look at the meeting. I want our citizens to look at it and to reach out to them, and that hopefully in the future that they will be better partners with the city of Kenner and all of the people that live in the city of Kenner. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. See no one else wishing to speak, I will address, somebody give me a motion to adjourn, sheesh.